Chapter 17, Under the Cold Lake. Chapter 17, Under the Cold Lake. Under the impact of the scarlet flame fruit's searing essence, Su Zimo's blood was already boiling. Each time he breathed out, his nose would release a scarlet airstream. The lifespan of the perfected golden core was at most 500 years. A flower that blooms and bear only one fruit in 1,000 years, what kind of concept would this spirit item possess? This flow of energy was rich and massive. Su Zimo could not endure it at all. He should count his blessings on having sustained for 5 minutes with the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Ah! Su Zimo hollered at the sky. He had no place to vent out the energy in his body. It was such a torture that he wished to die. Bang! Su Zimo circulated all the energy in his body and executed mountain pressing. He bumped against the stone walls in the cave with all his might. One by one, many rocks cracked and fell to the ground. Bang! 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 Both Su Zimo's eyes were red. He repeatedly bumped against the stone walls, seemingly wanting to release all the energy in his body. Each time he bumped against the wall, the cave would shake violently, plummeting gravel. The cave looked like it was going to collapse at any point in time. If the cave were to collapse, it would be akin to a hilltop or object weighing up to 10,000s of pounds crashing down. No matter how strong one's body was, he would be crushed into mud. Death in this place was imminent for a man and a monkey. Su Zimo had already lost his sanity but not the spirit monkey. Obviously, Su Zimo was going to die. He was neither relative nor acquaintance to the spirit monkey. They only met by chance. Escaping from this place as soon as possible would be the wisest option for the spirit monkey. However, there was a flash of worry in the spirit monkey's eyes at this juncture. The spirit monkey hesitated for a moment and did not choose to leave. Standing by the side, he was on pins and needles. He blinked his eyes constantly, seemingly hoping for a miracle to happen. Bang! Boom! Boom! At this moment, deafening sounds could be heard coming from the stone walls. The entire mountain trembled for a while. Oh! The eyes of the spirit monkey shone. He discovered that Su Zimo's knock on this occasion had actually broke the cave's stone walls and he had fallen into another cave. There was a cave within the cave. The spirit monkey quickened his steps and caught up with Su Zimo. The second cave was narrow and small and there was a small lake in the middle. The air was chilling and icy coldness penetrated one's bones. Before he could approach the cave, the spirit monkey was already shivering in the cold. He quickly halted his steps. The cool air emitted by the pond was extremely strong and even a little creepy. When the spirit monkey inched closer, a layer of frost appeared and was spreading slowly on his body's hair. Coldness penetrated him, as if countless steel needles were piercing through his blood and flesh. At this moment, Su Zimo was burning all over. When he sensed the bone-chilling coldness, he did not resist. Instead, he stepped towards the cold lake. The coldness was overwhelming and unbearable. However, Su Zimo, who had eaten the scarlet flame fruit by mistake, seemed to have innumerable flames burning in his body, that could coincidentally offset the effect of the cold. Su Zimo jumped directly into the cold lake. Thereafter, sizzling sounds could be heard as if a striking hot iron bar had been immersed into the icy water. Cold and hot, ice and fire, these two distinct forces collided in Su Zimo's body. Su Zimo rose and fell in the cold lake, his figure submerged and reappearing from time to time. Vapor rose and mist enshrouded. It felt like an immortal land. The spirit monkey stood and watched this scene from afar. He faintly guessed that Su Zimo had already survived this calamity under a twist of circumstances. As the ancient saying goes, the antidote to any venomous poison will always be present in the latter's vicinity. Everything in the world mutually reinforced or countered each other. This was the order of nature that would never change. Since the cave had bred such a radical fruit like the scarlet flame fruit, a contrasted and radically cold item should be growing within the vicinity in accompaniment. Su Zimo had taken the scarlet flame fruit by mistake and could not endure the massive energy. Nevertheless, he discovered the cold lake by chance and borrowed the coldness to suppress the searing essence and sealed it into every inch of his flesh and blood. These searing essence had not yet been dissipated from Su Zimo's body. However, a huge treasure trove had been sealed in his body. Each time he cultivated, he would refine the essence within him until he drained the energy of the scarlet flame fruit. This was greatly beneficial to Su Zimo in advancing in the realms in the future. From the moment that he leaped into the cold lake, Su Zimo had already regained his senses. Soon after, he realized that the energy of the scarlet flame fruit no longer posed a threat as it had been sealed in his body. Su Zimo wanted to jump out of the cold lake but his heart suddenly wavered. Since this place could breed the scarlet flame fruit, could there be other such fruits breeding around the cold lake? The cave where the cold lake was situated was small and narrow. One could see everything in it at a mere glance. Su Zimo did not discover anything. If he had guessed correctly, there was a high possibility that they would be at the bottom of the lake. Su Zimo took a deep breath and plunged into the cold lake. The cold lake was extremely cold. Oddly, there were no signs of freezing. Su Zimo dived deeper and deeper, withstanding the intensifying pressure as he dived. The lake's waters were also getting colder and colder. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Su Zimo's ability to hold his breath was very strong. He could hold it for 15 minutes long. However, as Su Zimo dived deeper, the coldness in his body intensified, his limbs gradually turned cold and his blood circulation slowed down. This cold lake seemed bottomless. Su Zimo realized that he would freeze to death before he could see the bottom of it if he were to continue to swim. At this moment, a beam of red light suddenly streaked across the depths of the corner of the cold lake suddenly. Su Zimo focused his gaze towards the light but he could not see it clearly as the lake's waters were blocking his view. He could only vaguely see a rock with 4 words engraved present in the deeper waters. The words were very blurry. Su Zimo slid both his arms and dived downwards again. After covering some distance, he had already reached the limit of his physique. Su Zimo opened his eyes wide and looked at that piece of huge rock. Fire. Su Zimo distinctively saw fire, one of the 4 words on the rock. The other 3 words still looked blurry. Coldness entered his body and Su Zimo shivered all over. If this continues, I'm afraid I'm going to die. Su Zimo dared not continue. He moved all his 4 limbs and swam towards the surface of the water. Soon after, Su Zimo climbed out of the cold lake. There was a layer of frost on his hair and brows. His lips were purplish and his face was ghastly pale. Swoosh! Su Zimo panted heavily, white clouds of vapor rising from the top of his head. Wow! Not far away, the spirit monkey chattered while staring at him. He was gesturing to Su Zimo anxiously, seemingly asking how Su Zimo was doing. I am fine. Su Zimo smiled. After resting for a while, he stood up and left the cold lake. After this round of torture, Su Zimo had gained something from the misfortune. He had not only achieved initial success for the tendon's transformation section but also sealed a massive energy source in his body. This meant that, henceforth, Su Zimo could cultivate at any point in time to refine and absorb the essence sealed in his body without the need to consume any food or drinks. Su Zimo's mood improved tremendously. He patted the shoulders of the spirit monkey and said smilingly, "Damn monkey. Thanks. Che." The spirit monkey glanced at the sky and snorted, "Hermp." He did reciprocate Su Zimo's gratitude. Su Zimo could not stifle his laughter. This monkey was very proud. Su Zimo understood its temperament a little. Su Zimo stood aside. He stood with his legs apart, parallel to his shoulders, in preparation to cultivate the 3 styles of tendons transformation: Sanguine Ape Tri-Style, Sanguine Ape Fist Seal, Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering and Sanguine Ape Transformation. The first 2 styles were killing moves while the 3rd style was the core move. Dayu once told Su Zimo that one could not casually execute the Sanguine Ape Transformation unless he was on the brink of death. When he was surrounded by the packs of wolves in the valley, Su Zimo did not release the Sanguine Ape Transformation because he had not attained initial success of tendons transformation. If he were to do so, his large tendons would split, his body would explode and he would die on the spot. Anaconda's tendons were flexible and resilient, whereas ape's tendons were both strong and soft. The outcome of cultivating ape first would cause the large tendons to burst and split, for they could not withstand the vigorous forces of the constant tugs and vibration. One would become paralyzed. This was the reason for the need to cultivate the anaconda prior to the ape styles. Su Zimo rested for a while. His body straightened. With his left fist guarding his chest, his right fist drew an arc in mid-air and smashed downwards. Sanguine Ape Fist Seal. Right on the heels of that, Su Zimo retracted his fists, bent his knees and shrunk his body like an agile monkey. Seemingly kneeling with one knee, he put his palms together as if he was holding a fruit and lifted them upwards. Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering. Be it name or posture, these 2 styles did not seem like killing moves. Su Zimo was baffled. He could not figure it out and had a hunch that he seemed to be missing something. Gaga gaga. At this very moment, a fearless and bold laughter rang in his ears. Su Zimo looked back. He saw that spirit monkey sitting on the ground, laughing out loud and pointing at Su Zimo. His eyes were filled with contempt. He was only short of writing the word fool and similar words on his face. I have been looked down upon by this damn monkey again. Su Zimo glared at him and said, "What is wrong with you again?" The spirit monkey stopped mocking. Leaping up, he suddenly dashed toward Su Zimo like an arrow. Both his hands were guarding the chest, his right hand cupped into a fist, drawing an arc in mid-air, charging and aiming at Su Zimo's head. Su Zimo's expression changed greatly. The spirit monkey's punch was completely the style of Sanguine Ape Fist Seal. It was exactly the same and even more vicious, filled with a murderous and imposing aura. Su Zimo did not understand the meaning of the word seal in Sanguine Ape Fist Seal previously. He had a moment of realization at the sight of the spirit monkey smashing down his fist. The spirit monkey clenched his fist. Its greenish-black large tendons protruded, its flesh and blood expanding. The fist that swelled up like a huge seal suddenly dropped. There was an explosive sound in the air with this punch. So, that was the case. After easing the tendons, one could make use of the strength of the tendons to tighten the flesh and skin. When the tendons and flesh were knitted together, one would use the fist as a seal. This was the essence of the Sanguine Ape Fist Seal. How much force could a human create by smashing his fist? However, if a huge seal were to smash directly in the face, what would be the outcome? Both Su Zimo and the spirit monkey used the same style, but at 2 completely different levels, there was a world of a difference in impact. Chapter 18, 1 Year On. Chapter 18, 1 Year On. The spirit monkey suddenly executed such a ferocious Sanguine Ape Fist Seal. Su Zimo was taken aback. Su Zimo was suddenly enlightened on the gist of this style. Slightly distracted, he was hit right in the face by the spirit monkey's punch. The blow was severe. Su Zimo was caught off guard. He was flung out and he bumped onto the stone walls in the cave, causing a huge dent on it. Dense cracks started to appear around the stone wall. Su Zimo was dazed by the hit. At one moment, this monkey was laughing in such a carefree manner. In the next moment, he turned hostile and attacked. It was completely illogical. In fact, although the spirit monkey was intelligent and psychic, it did not understand the way humans interacted with one another. Hence, it was not influenced by the fighting and scheming as well as deceiving and blackmailing means in the mortal world. In the forest, the only communication between the demon clan was combat. The spirit monkey was simple and innocent. It retained the most primitive instinct of survival. It would fight or smile when it felt like it. He saved Su Zimo only because of its enmity with the wolves. He completely did not care whether Su Zimo was human or demon. When it released its punch, the spirit monkey had not even thought of retracting it. If Su Zimo had not cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and consumed the scarlet flame fruit, attained initial success with body tempering and tendons transformation, this sanguine ape fist seal style would most probably make him half dead. Su Zimo touched the blood flowing out of his nostrils. His face darkened as he said, "Damn monkey, do you wish to fight?" Wow! The spirit monkey was full of disdain. He curled his fingers at Su Zimo and provoked the latter, chattering continuously. Without a word, Su Zimo got up and released the plow heaven stride. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before the spirit monkey, turned his palm in the posture of rupturing the ground and landed it. Wah! The spirit monkey shivered all over, seemingly shocked by the prowess of the plow heaven stride combined with the ground-rupturing palm. The spirit monkey seemed to have sensed the powers of the ground-rupturing palm. Hence, it did not continue with the fight. It tiptoed and retreated with lightning speed and agility. It was an empty hit, but Su Zimo did not take it to heart. He followed on closely. After 6 months of life and death experiences, Su Zimo had not only cultivated spirit perception but also mastered close combat ability and various kinds of fighting techniques. Su Zimo followed on closely, clenching both fists below his belly. Knuckles protruded, and it was as if a pair of horns was piercing towards the chest of the spirit monkey. At the sight of this, the spirit monkey did not retreat. It attacked instead. Its body curled, one knee seemingly. At the same time that he dodged the bovine's moon-gazing, both of its palms seemed to be holding onto a fruit and lifting it up. Sanguine ape fruit offering. When the spirit monkey executed this style, Su Zimo could not sense the slightest bit of murderous intent. The posture of sanguine ape fruit offering looked like someone kneeling on one knee and paying respects obediently. However, for some unknown reason, Su Zimo suddenly felt his scalp blistering and also goosebumps breaking out all over his body. The spirit perception that he cultivated told him that a huge killing move was concealed in this style. Su Zimo closed his eyes and retreated rapidly. At the same time, he paid attention to the spirit monkey's next moves. Pang! 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 The initial curl of the spirit monkey's body suddenly bounced open upon reaching right before Su Zimo. The large tendons in its body were pulsating, sounds of the bowstring ran. It was suddenly releasing and gushing with murderous intent. Thoughts flashed across Su Zimo's mind. He had faintly grasped the crux of the sanguine ape fruit offering. On one hand, when his large tendons contracted and suddenly stretched, it would release greater powers. On the other hand, sanguine ape fist seal first displayed weakness and restrained the murderous intent, followed by a counterattack. Apes loved peach and fruits most, but it offered the fruit at this point in time. Something was amiss. When it offered the fruit, it was evident that the ape already had a murderous intent. Bang! 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 Su Zimo and the spirit monkey sparred constantly in the cave, feet curling and colliding, palms moving like Saber. With Su Zimo's combat techniques, he could receive and release blows freely. He was forceful and resilient, swift and flexible. He carried an aura that could block the heaven and split the earth. Shortly after, he subdued the spirit monkey. However, it was not easy for Su Zimo to defeat the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey realized that it was difficult to gain the upper hand in the combat. Hence, it began to move in all directions and flee from Su Zimo with swift styles and agile steps. Of course, from the beginning till the end, Su Zimo did not use all of his strength. Hence, although the spirit monkey would occasionally scream loudly, gnashing his teeth, it could still get up and fight again when he was overturned by Su Zimo's hit. The spirit monkey was a good sparring partner. Su Zimo not only wanted to practice his martial skills but also comprehend the gist of the Sanguine ape tri-style as much as possible. A human and a monkey did not interact much, but they had an indescribable, tacit understanding with each other. In the time to come, Su Zimo lived in this cave. A man and a monkey occasionally went out to look for trouble with the wolf clan. After killing many wolves, they fled before the wolves could round them up. Of course, Su Zimo refused to smear himself with the spirit monkey's poop anymore. He found a type of herb that could conceal his smell and avoided the wolves. Outside the cave, Su Zimo and the spirit monkey joined forces to kill wolves. After returning to the cave, after just a few interactions, a human and a monkey would indulge in a sparring match. Later on, when the spirit monkey realized that he could not gain the upper hand, it felt indignant and started to do sneak attacks. Sometimes, when Su Zimo was resting, eating or sleeping, the spirit monkey would sneak up to punch him before turning and escaping, then make funny faces at Su Zimo from afar, laughing arrogantly and loudly as if it was the victor. After some time, as Su Zimo's spirit perception became increasingly acute, the spirit monkey found it hard to succeed in his sneak attacks. In the blink of an eye, another 5 months passed. The 1 year of test in Songlang mountain range was almost coming to an end. During this period, Su Zimo had been refining the energy of the scarlet flame fruit and devouring blood and flesh at the same time. The body tempering and tendons transformation realms advanced continuously towards phenomenal success. Su Zimo's body was coordinated, it could be hard or soft, and his strides were as light as a raccoon. When he walked, there was no sound in the air and no traces in the snow. He leaped and shuttled in the dense forest like apes. Using the old tree branches as his support, his feet did not even need to touch the ground. Of course, to Su Zimo, his close combat ability had improved the most. In Songlang mountain range, there were not many spirit beasts that were Su Zimo's match now. A man and a monkey seemed to have become the lord of the place. Many spirit beasts would choose to retreat at the sight of them. Su Zimo had a hunch that the cold lake in the cave was not ordinary. During this period, he dived into the cold lake countless times, wanting to explore it. However, before Su Zimo could travel to the lake bed, bone-chilling coldness would penetrate his body and slow down his blood circulation, showing signs of freezing. He would return without any success each time. Today, Su Zimo planned to check out the cold lake one last time before he left the Songlang mountain range. Not long after, Su Zimo rose to the surface of the water. He could not hide the disappointment in his eyes and shook his head. He still did not succeed. Body tempering and tendons transformation sections train the flesh, blood and large tendons. In the deeper waters, the 3 body parts could endure the invasion of the cold, but when the coldness penetrated the bones and seeped through the blood veins, Su Zimo could not endure it longer. In the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the 2 sections after tendons transformation were bone strengthening and marrow cleansing. It seems that I have the capability to get close to the bottom of the lake only after cultivating the marrow cleansing section. I can come again and explore at that time. Su Zimo said secretly. He did not know where the spirit monkey went. Perhaps it went out to look for the wolf clan's trouble. Su Zimo was not worried. The spirit monkey was extremely alert and intelligent. Although there were many spirit beasts in Songlang mountain range, it was difficult for them to hurt it. Furthermore, during this period, the spirit monkey's ability had improved much after sparring and fighting with Su Zimo. Su Zimo was most curious of something. The spirit monkey seemed to have learned the tendon's transformation section before. The spirit monkey not only knew the Sanguine ape tri-style. His usual breathing and expiration was also similar to that in the tendon's transformation section. Yet, it was a little different. It seemed a little strange. When Su Zimo questioned the spirit monkey, it seemed to be a taboo. It always averted his question. Later on, Su Zimo no longer questioned him. Today, Su Zimo did not leave the cave. He intended to bid farewell to the spirit monkey upon its return and then return to Pingyang town. 1 year had passed. Su Zimo missed the Su family very much, especially his older brother and younger sister. Of course, Su Zimo also looked forward to meeting Dai Yu again. In the blink of an eye, the sun gradually descended and it was almost evening. The spirit monkey had not returned. Su Zimo furrowed his brows. There was a flash of worry in his eyes. Zhonglang mountain range was very eerie at night. Scary spirit demons would often appear, looking for prey. Although Su Zimo and the spirit monkey were very powerful, they were not a match for spirit demons. Hence, before the night arrived, they would return to the mountain cave. The situation of the spirit monkey not returning for the entire day had never happened before. Su Zimo felt very uneasy. He suddenly stood up and drew out the thunderbolt saber that was pierced in the stone wall. He tied it to his back and stepped out of the cave. Chapter 19, You Are the One Courting Death. Chapter 19, You Are the One Courting Death. The sky gradually darkened. It was almost evening. It was extremely dangerous to tread in Zhonglang mountain range at this hour. Even Su Zimo could not guarantee his own safety. If he were to encounter spirit demons, the odds would not be in his favor. However, Su Zimo still decided to look for the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey had not only saved his life but also was deeply bonded to him. After 6 months of interaction and numerous sparrings, a man and a monkey had gradually forged a close relationship. Getting along with the spirit monkey was much easier than getting along with humans. Mutual sincerity was the only requirement. Although the spirit monkey loved to fight and poke fun at Su Zimo, it would not lie to or make use of him. There was neither mutual deceit and distrust nor plotting against each other. It was easy to identify the spirit monkey through its awful body odor. After getting a few whiffs outside the cave, Su Zimo decided to dash towards a certain direction. It was only later on did Su Zimo realize that this monkey had a special preference for its own poop. Hence, the fact that it was willing to smear its poop on Su Zimo meant that it had treated him as one of its own. Along the way, Su Zimo encountered many spirit beasts. However, Su Zimo did not engage in any fights with them. Instead, he detoured and continued to search for the spirit monkey via the latter's body odor. Most of these spirit beasts recognized Su Zimo. Hence, they would not court trouble by looking for him on their own accord. Not long after, Su Zimo halted his steps. Both his ears wriggled and captured the faint sounds of weapons clashing against one another. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. Why would there be sounds of weapons clashing in Zhonglang mountain range? Even Khanate experts dared not venture deep into Zhonglang mountain range, especially when night was nearing. Cultivator. This word flashed across Su Zimo's mind. His expression was as capricious as the weather. If it were 1 year ago, like an aggressive and ignorant rookie, Su Zimo would be very eager and thrilled to fight them on. However, having gone through a year of solid training, Su Zimo was not as immature and impetuous as before. Most importantly, cultivators who dared to remain at Zhonglang mountain range in the evening were definitely at advanced realms. They could not possibly be level 1 or 2 Qi refinement warriors. Most of the spirit beasts in Zhonglang mountain range were not threats to the spirit monkey. However, the situation would be different if the spirit monkey were to encounter a cultivator. At the thought of this, Su Zimo crawled on the ground with both his hands and legs. He was twisting and turning like an anaconda slithering across the forest without a single sound. Anaconda swath. The first style of Tendon's transformation was to approach the opponent without a sound. The sound of weapons clashing ahead were becoming increasingly clearer and intensive. In between the clashes, he could even hear the sounds of some men taunting and a woman snarling. Under the dark and misty sky, Su Zimo lay in the grass and observed the battle that was occurring about 10 feet from him. The trees and plants surrounding the battle had already been cut by the weapons. A relatively wide and spacious open space could be seen. 5 men dressed in Taoist robes were surrounding and attacking a lady in yellow robe. Each of the 5 men was controlling a flying sword and brandishing both hands. It was as if an invisible force was connecting the flying sword to the individual. The yellow-robed lady was also controlling a flying sword. There was a layer of frost on the sword. Apparently, this sword was more superior than those in the hands of the 5 men. The flying sword seemed very light and agile under the control of the yellow-robed lady. The yellow-robed lady seemed to have some treasure with her. When she was occasionally pierced by the other party's flying sword, a glowing shield would light up around her body. However, the shine of the shield got dimmer and dimmer as time passed. The yellow-robed lady was fighting against 5 people. Her strides looked clumsy, it seemed that she could not hold up any longer. She was obviously disadvantaged now. At the sight of the fighting and killing between the cultivators, Su Zimo felt that he had widened his horizons. Su Zimo retracted his gaze and looked at the other side. Beside the battlefield, 2 men were watching the fight. Their attires were completely the same as those 5 men on the battlefield. Obviously, they belonged to the same group. There was a spirit monkey standing in between the 2 men. It was covered with injuries but looked arrogant and indignant, its eyes shining with a murderous aura. Su Zimo focused his gaze. Both the fore and hind limbs of the spirit monkey had been cuffed tightly by 2 iron hoops. The sharp spikes inside the rim of the hoops had already pierced into its flesh. The spirit monkey had completely lost its freedom. It was hard for it to move an inch. Su Zimo had never fought with the cultivators and did not know their tactics. He was further unaware of the realms that these few cultivators were at. However, a murderous intent rose in Su Zimo's heart at the thought that the spirit monkey was in trouble. His gaze was cold and sinister. Su Zimo pondered for a moment. He did not strike immediately. Instead, he lowered his body and hit himself more. This was because he knew that once he strikes, he must kill his enemies at once. He could not give the opponent any time to react. This was not a one-to-one combat. He faced a total of 7 cultivators. A chi refinement warrior with a gaunt and thin face smiled and said lustfully, "Young lady, your augmentation talisman won't be able to hold out long. I advise you to surrender. Otherwise, you will suffer." That's right. Swords and daggers don't have eyes. If they cut your little face accidentally, it will be such a pity. You have been poisoned with our Pisces aqua powder. You can't hang on for too long, even if you are a Foundation establishment cultivator. The yellow-robed lady arched her brows in anger, her expression chilly and aloof. She said coldly, "The few of you are courting death. You're just chi refinement warriors. I'm a cultivator from Azure Frost Sect. If you know what is good for you, quickly surrender." Su Zimo was stunned. He did not expect the yellow-robed lady to be a Foundation establishment cultivator. The frightening thing was that she was seemingly poisoned by the Pisces aqua powder. Hence, she would not be a match for these 5 chi refinement warriors. As to the augmentation talisman mentioned by that chi refinement warrior, Su Zimo had heard about it. One of the chi refinement warriors, who had a large face, sneered. "Hey, since we know that you are a cultivator of Azure Frost Sect, the more we can't let you off. You have fallen into the Joyful Seven's hands. Will make you feel so ecstatic that you will crave for death. Be obedient. Seemingly distracted by these words, the flying sword controlled by the yellow-robed lady halted for a moment. As a result, she was pierced by two other flying swords. Clang! Clang! A shield with a golden glow appeared around the yellow-robed lady and blocked the two flying swords. However, upon the impact of the blow, the shield was filled with cracks and looked like it would break at any point in time. The yellow-robed lady pursed her red lips without saying a word. She defended with all her might and refused to concede defeat. On the other hand, the bald-headed Chi refinement warrior beside the spirit monkey looked relaxed. He said smilingly, "We have gained a lot in this trip to Tsanglang mountain range. This lady definitely has a lot of treasures with her. Most importantly, be it face or figure, this lady is of supreme grade. She will be a delight for the 7 of us." That said, if we don't have the beast trapping hoop that Master passed down to us, we really won't be able to take down this monkey, said another Chi refinement warrior who was carrying a long rod. There was a lingering fear in his heart. The bald-headed Chi refinement warrior sneered and said, "After we return, let's torture this monkey and force it to pledge a blood oath. I don't believe that we can't subdue a beast." When the two saw that the outcome was quite certain, they could not help relaxing a little and chatting casually. At this moment, there was a bloody shine in the spirit monkey's eyes. Initially rooted to the ground, it suddenly turned its body and opened its mouth wide, revealing its sharp teeth as it bit the neck of the Chi refinement warrior beside him. The spirit monkey's limbs could not move as they had been bound. However, biting was an innate skill of it since the day it was born. If it could successfully bite the Chi refinement warrior, the latter would not have any chance of surviving. The spirit monkey was tall and big. It had to lower its head to bite the Chi refinement warrior who was relatively shorter. In addition, its body was restrained. As such, its action was slightly delayed and that person reacted in time. The countenance of the Chi refinement warrior holding the rod changed. He quickly dodged. Pierce. Although he had avoided being bitten on the vital point of his neck, a big piece of flesh on his shoulder tip had been torn off by the spirit monkey. Fresh blood was spilling out from it. Ah! The Chi refinement warrior cried in pain, looking ghastly pale. He touched the small cloth bag below his waist and a porcelain bottle appeared in his palm. He opened the bottle and took out a tuft of powder-like substance before applying it on his wound. This stopped the fresh blood from dripping. It was very amazing. After the Chi refinement warrior managed his wound, he lifted his steel rod furiously. There was a flash of light and the rod landed hard on the knees of the spirit monkey. He scolded, "Bastard, kneel down." There was a loud thud on the ground. The spirit monkey trembled. Flashes of pain could be seen in its eyes. However, this hit by the rod did not make the spirit monkey kneel down. On the contrary, it provoked its murderous instinct. The spirit monkey chewed the piece of torn flesh rampantly, revealing a ferocious and menacing glare. It then swallowed it in one gulp. Thereafter, it turned to face the Chi refinement warrior and laughed, gaga, loudly with a mocking look in its eyes. He was untamed, obstinate and unyielding. "Bastard, you're courting death." At the sight of the spirit monkey's behavior, the Chi refinement warrior's fury intensified. He did not care whether his wound would burst open. He lifted the steel rod again and smashed it towards the top of the spirit monkey's head. At this very moment, a cold voice rang in his ears. "You're the one courting death." Chapter 20, Kill. Chapter 20, Kill. When this sound was heard, it was accompanied by a strong aura of death that almost suffocated him. "Who is this? You actually sneaked up behind me quietly and I didn't notice it?" Before he could finish his thought, his head hurt and he lost consciousness immediately. Initially, the Qi refinement warrior who was standing at the other side looked relaxed when he saw his comrade teach the spirit monkey a lesson agitatedly. He did not expect to see such a terrifying and eerie scene. A distance away, the bush had moved a little, but the bald-headed Qi refinement warrior did not take it to heart. However, a figure mysteriously appeared behind his comrade in the next moment. Enshrouded by the misty and dark skies, the intruder exuded a towering murderous aura, as if he was a ghost from hell. It happened too quickly and suddenly. The intruder slammed his palm on the head of the Qi refinement warrior holding the rod. The latter was caught off guard and could not defend himself at all. Poof! 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 The head of the Qi refinement warrior holding the rod was actually pressed directly into his chest. Blood-chilling sounds of flesh and blood bursting could be heard coming from the neck. The bald-headed Qi refinement warrior looked aghast. Just as he was about to shout out loudly, he saw the intruder taking successive moves. The figure stretched his legs had reached him in just 2 strides. The murderous aura was pervasive. This overbearing aura forced the bald-headed Qi refinement warrior to swallow the words in his mouth back into his throat again. The bald-headed Qi refinement warrior instinctively stretched out his hands towards the cloth bag on his waist. He calmed down slightly only when a flying sword landed in his hands. However, before the Qi refinement warrior could draw out his flying sword, the intruder's palm had already landed on him. Pa! The skull of the bald-headed Qi refinement warrior was smashed in just one hit. His brain split and he died on the spot. In actual fact, when the spirit monkey tried to bite the Qi refinement warrior holding the rod, Su Zimo had already begun taking action. However, as both parties were about 10 feet away from each other, Su Zimo dared not increase his speed, for fear of being discovered. When Su Zimo reached these 2 Qi refinement warriors' sides, they were destined to meet with a fatal calamity. The entire process seemed very slow upon narration, but in fact, it occurred in the split of a moment. To top-notch martial experts, this moment was especially crucial. Ow! Ow! The spirit monkey recognized Su Zimo. His eyes lit up and he was overjoyed. He shouted loudly to express the excitement in his heart. Su Zimo ignored the spirit monkey. Without a word and carrying a calm demeanor, he had slayed the bald-headed Qi refinement warrior. Twisting and moving, he charged straight to the other battlefield. Long before he attacked, Su Zimo had already made the preparations. Once he attacked, he had to give it his best shot and crumble the other party in lightning speed. Putting aside the obvious point that these 7 Qi refinement warriors were ill-intentioned, the painful torture that they administered to the spirit monkey alone had already provoked Su Zimo's murderous instinct. Most importantly, if he were to let off any one of them, they would become a source of endless trouble. Su Zimo heard very clearly that these 7 individuals were from the Joyful clan. Who knew what strong and powerful cultivators were in this clan? Would they hunt him down? On the other battlefield, 5 Qi refinement warriors from the Joyful clan jumped in shock at the sudden change in circumstances. Who would have thought that 2 of their clan mates would die grievously in a matter of moments? The most perplexing thing was that the intruder was clad in skins of beast and full of black stubble on his face. He looked like an uncivilized, primitive wild man. They also could not sense any flow of spirit qi from his body. He was not a cultivator. Such a barbarian could actually kill 2 level 6 qi refinement warriors in the blink of an eye? The 5 of them already did not have the time to think, because this barbarian had already dashed to them with a pervasive murderous intent and monstrous aura. There was a flash of cruelty in the eyes of the fat-faced Qi refinement warrior who was facing Su Zimo. He smiled grimly. Where did this barbarian come from? You have no sense of danger. Gee! This fellow snarled and directed his flying sword to the oncoming Su Zimo. A beam of light shone from the flying sword. The sword's aura intensified. It was so extraordinary. Su Zimo closed his eyes briefly. Facing this flying sword, he had initially planned to use the bovine-tongued saber to shatter or hurl away the sword. However, Su Zimo's acute spirit perception told him that this sword was very powerful and might possibly injure him. Su Zimo charged forward in lightning speed. However, the flying sword was lunging at him at an even faster speed. If it was 1 year ago, Su Zimo would not be able to react in time, let alone dodge this flying sword. However, today, Su Zimo suddenly lowered his body. All of his 4 limbs exerted strength as he twisted his body, staying close to the ground. Agile and swift, he had a close shave with the flying sword. In a matter of moments, he appeared in front of the fat-faced Qi Refinement Warrior. The Qi Refinement Warrior was stunned, the colors on his face drained. Su Zimo suddenly got up. His body and 4 limbs became as soft and flexible as an anaconda. It coiled onto the plump body of this man. Large tendons pulsated, flesh and blood expanded, and the entire body exploded with energy. After Anaconda Swath, he executed another killing move of Tendon's transformation, Anaconda Strangle. All the spirit beasts in the Tsang Lang mountain range were aware. After being bitten by the anaconda, one might still escape. However, if one's body were to be coiled by the anaconda, they would die for sure. Even if one's body was strong enough to wrestle with the anaconda, he would eventually die of suffocation. In the past 6 months, although the spirit monkey often sparred with Su Zimo, it had never dared to allow Su Zimo to close up on and coil it. This Qi Refinement Warrior did not have a body that was as strong and resilient as the spirit monkey. After Su Zimo wrapped and strangled it, all the bones in his body were crushed. Deafening sounds of "pa, pa" could be heard. It was horrible and gruesome. Poof! Bloody fog filled the air. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, a burly figure burst open on the spot and turned into a puddle of fleshy mud. This was the true powers of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. After killing this man, Su Zimo did not stop. He used Plow Heaven Stride and headed towards another Qi Refinement Warrior with a gaunt and frail face. Although Su Zimo was unaware of the cultivation realm of the 5 Qi Refinement Warriors present, using his spirit perception, he could vaguely sense that the fat-faced Qi Refinement Warrior who died earlier and the one before him right now were the greatest threats to him. He could reduce the chances of an accident to the lowest if he could kill the 2 of them first. At the sight of Su Zimo killing 3 people, the skinny Qi Refinement Warrior wore a grave expression. He instantly became cautious. A ray of light burst out from his fingertip and entered the flying sword. The flying sword flickered and shone brightly. Go! This flying sword dashed toward Su Zimo, its movements as swift as thunder and as fast as lightning. One of the 3 Qi Refinement Warriors who were attacking the yellow-robed lady also came forward and directed his flying sword to pierce the middle of Su Zimo's back. The 2 Qi Refinement Warriors concentrated on rounding up and attacking Su Zimo. Su Zimo seemed to have eyes grown on his back. Without even turning back, as he was charging forward, he dodged and got away from the flying sword piercing towards his back. Simultaneously, Su Zimo used his backhand to grip the thunderbolt saber on his back, spread his arms and slashed towards the flying sword coming towards him. Clang! Ear-piercing sounds of weapons clashing could be heard. The thunderbolt saber chipped off after colliding with the flying sword. Cracks appeared around the chip. Obviously, the saber was ruined and could no longer be used. Su Zimo was stunned. Since he got hold of the thunderbolt saber, it had always been of use to him. It could even slash the skin, hair, flesh and blood of spirit beasts. Unexpectedly, it almost shattered into pieces after colliding with the agile, long and slim flying sword of the cultivator. Su Zimo's expression did not change. He was not bothered. This was because he had already achieved his objective. The thunderbolt saber had hit the flying sword, riding on the shocking energy that exploded from his body, it had already sent the flying sword on a deviated route that was some distance away. The flying sword that should initially pierce into Su Zimo's skull only passed through the passage beside his cheek. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo had never paused his attacks for a single moment. His speed only increased. He was closing in. Su Zimo used the Thunderbolt Saber to block the flying sword so that he could shorten the distance between he and the thin and frail Qi Refinement warrior. Su Zimo remembered Dai Yu's words by heart. Most of the cultivators' bodies are relatively weak. As long as you can avert their first wave of attack and take the chance to shorten the distance between both of you, you will be able to make use of the strong and powerful close combat ability of the demon clan to slay them. Chapter 21, Calamity. Chapter 21, Calamity. Su Zimo widened his strides and walked to the front of the skinny Qi Refinement warrior. As soon as he flipped his hand, the ground-rupturing palm was violently executed towards the face of the other party. The skinny Qi Refinement warrior was very alert and quick to react. At the sight of Su Zimo dodging the flying sword, he had searched out a face mirror from the cloth bag on his waist and chanted something. The mirror enlarged instantly, glistening and crystal clear. Su Zimo had long noticed the small cloth bag hanging on the waist of the cultivators. It seemed to be a cosmic bag. Whenever they touched it, they could retrieve something. However, Su Zimo did not find it unusual. Compared to the methods that Dai Yu used to open up a big and spacious cultivation field, these small cloth bags were obviously much weaker. In a hurry, the skinny Qi Refinement warrior lifted the mirror in his hands to shield his head. Bang! Crack! 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 Su Zimo's hands landed on the mirror of the skinny Qi Refinement warrior. First, there was a deafening sound of an explosion. Immediately after, lines of cracks appeared on the mirror surface. Ah! The skinny Qi Refinement warrior gave out a miserable cry. His arms had been instantly crushed by the powers reflected by the surface of the mirror. His veins and bones shattered and his body was flung off. This time, Su Zimo dared to hit with his bare fists. On the one hand, it was because he sensed that the mirror did not have any attack properties. On the other hand, the surface of the mirror did not shine when the other party took it out. As expected, this mirror had been destroyed in one hit by Su Zimo. The skinny Qi Refinement warrior almost died on the spot. He fell to the ground, looking as white as a sheet and shrieking, "Who are you? How dare you intervene in the matters of my Joy clan? I'll kill your people." Su Zimo sneered. He moved forward with large strides, wanting to end the life of this skinny Qi Refinement warrior. At this very moment, Su Zimo sighted a flash of strange looks beneath the eyes of the skinny Qi Refinement warrior. Not good. Su Zimo was stunned. He quickly moved backwards. This was the first time that Su Zimo was involved in a fight with a cultivator. He had to be extremely cautious, for fear that the other party might catch him off guard with some methods that he was unaware of. Splash! The skinny Qi Refinement warrior suddenly raised his hand and dispersed a powder that emitted a faint fragrance. Nevertheless, Su Zimo was a step quicker in moving backwards and did not come into contact with this mist of powder. "Comrade, this is the joyful reunion powder. You must not breathe this in." The sound of the yellow-robed lady could be heard. It was gentle and beautiful, carrying a tinge of anxiety. Su Zimo frowned and looked at the skinny Qi Refinement warrior who was hiding in the mist of powder. He paused for a moment. If he were to wait for a while, these powder would naturally disperse and not pose a threat. However, Su Zimo could not waste time because there were 3 more cultivators nearby. Su Zimo decisively turned and gave up on that fellow temporarily. He then charged towards the person behind him. At the sight of the skinny Qi Refinement warrior being reduced to a handicapped by one hit of the palm, the man behind Su Zimo had long turned pale with fright. He quickly controlled the flying sword to charge at Su Zimo's glabella with all his might. There was no flicker or shine of light in this flying sword. Su Zimo closed his eyes and did not intend to dodge it. Maintaining the posture of downward thrust, he stuck out his right hand and gently lay it on the oncoming flying sword. Rap, hit, pull. Swash. Although this flying sword did not break, it had been thrown aside by Su Zimo. It landed in the mud, slanted. This chi refinement warrior was stunned. Although he was only controlling a low-end item spirit, he had never seen anyone receiving a spirit weapon with bare hands and not suffering any injury. What kind of monster was this? After a moment of dawdle, Su Zimo appeared by the side of this man. His body curled, one knee seemingly kneeling, his palms put together and lifted up. Sanguine ape fruit offering. Bang! This lift-up happened to support the chin of this chi refinement warrior. Sounds of breaking could be heard coming from the neck bones and chin of this man. His head fell backwards and hung on his back. His eyes were wide open, filled with horror. He was already dead. There were two more chi refinement warriors attacking the yellow-robed lady. At the sight of this, they were instantly scared out of their wits. Su Zimo spread his body and charged towards one of them. Left hand guarding his chest, right hand clenched into a fist, large tendons pulsating, blood and flesh expanding, his fists turned into seal and landed from the sky with a deafening thud. A large shadow engulfed, covering the sky and the sun. This chi refinement warrior was stunned so badly by Su Zimo's aura that both his lungs and guts were splitting. How would he dare to try to attack or defend? He hurriedly turned and tried to flee. Believing that he was going to escape from the scope of the large seal above him, he was elated. At this very moment, he could hear the sounds of bow strings vibrating. It was petrifying. Pang! 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 Su Zimo's large tendons stretched and his arms swelled and enlarged. The gigantic seal came crashing down, caught up with that chi refinement warrior who was fleeing in panic and landed on the top of his head. Poof! After his skull exploded, there was still some left-over energy in the gigantic seal. It immediately crushed and shattered this man's body. At the sight of 5 of his clan mates dying and one being severely injured, the remaining chi refinement warrior lost his cool. While he was distracted, the yellow-robed lady controlled the flying sword and circled his neck once. A large head was hurled off and fresh blood splattered. The headless corpse fell to the ground and twitched from time to time without any consciousness. The yellow-robed lady was covered in delicate beads of sweat. After killing this man, her chest was heaving and she was panting slightly, seemingly to have reached the limit of her physique. Su Zimo turned and looked at the skinny chi refinement warrior who lost his arm. However, he discovered that the other party had seized the opportunity to escape to a distance. His right hand was pressing onto his wound. With a flying sword under his feet, he traveled through the sky and disappeared into the forest immediately. Su Zimo frowned. At this moment, it was too late for him to chase him. Or rather, even if he could catch up with him, Su Zimo could not do anything to him as he was high in the air. Suddenly, Su Zimo discovered that he had a fatal weakness. He could not fly in the sky. If the chi refinement warrior were to execute the sword kinesis flight immediately before fighting him, he could only be attacked and could not strike back. After this round of killings, night had gradually fallen. One could vaguely hear the roaring sounds of the spirit beasts shaking the heavens and earth. Looking at the back view of the skinny chi refinement warrior in the darkness, there was a flash of worry in Su Zimo's eyes. This man's escape was ultimately a calamity. No one knew when this calamity would begin to erupt. However, another thought flashed across Su Zimo's mind. Night had fallen and it was the time where spirit beasts and spirit demons come out praying. This man's broken arm would emit a strong stench of blood. He might not leave the Tsang Lang mountain range alive. Ow! Ow! The spirit monkey's shouts interrupted Su Zimo's deep thoughts. The spirit monkey was tied up. He leaped about on the ground that he was standing at, shouting at Su Zimo. It wanted him to help it remove the iron hoops around its limbs quickly. Stay there obediently first. Who told you to run around? It was a rare sight for the spirit monkey to be defeated. Su Zimo deliberately cast him aside and went to the corpses of the few cultivators. He removed the 6 small cloth bags from their bodies and tucked them into his arms without even looking. Although he did not know what they were, Su Zimo could sense that these small cloth bags were quite famous and seemed to be cosmic bags. It definitely contained many treasures. Su Zimo turned and picked up a flying sword that had fallen to the ground. The shape of this flying sword was a little unique. It did not have a handle but only a blade that was extremely sharp. Typical people would have problems holding it. However, this was not much of an issue for Su Zimo. Su Zimo held onto the sharp blade with his bare hands and walked to the spirit monkey. He aimed at the iron hoops that bound the spirit monkey's limbs and slashed hard. Clang! Sparks were flying everywhere. A white streak appeared on the iron hoop but it did not break. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. This flying sword could even shatter the thunderbolt saber. Yet, it could not break the iron hoops on the spirit monkey's limbs. This was a little troublesome. Su Zimo could faintly sense that it was not because the flying sword was not sharp enough, but because he did not use it correctly. Chapter 22, Yao Xue. Chapter 22, Yao Xue. Just as Su Zimo was deep in thought, the yellow-robed lady gradually approached him and said softly, "I'm Yao Xue from Azure Frost Sect. Thank you for saving me in fighting for justice, comrade." Su Zimo's thoughts were focused on how to remove the hoops from the spirit monkey's forelimbs. He only glanced at Yao Xue but did not reply. Yao Xue pondered shortly before saying, "Comrade, you wish to remove this beast-trapping hoop, right? Why don't I give it a try?" Su Zimo took a hesitant glance at Yao Xue before nodding. Yao Xue tapped the flying sword in her hands gently. 2 flashes of light appeared and a layer of frost covered the blade of the sword instantly. The aura of the sword was appalling. Su Zimo looked on conscientiously. Earlier on, only 1 flash of light appeared on the flying swords of the 2 Qi refinement warriors from Joyful Clan. However, there were 2 flashes of light on the flying sword in Yao Xue's hands now. Obviously, the sword in this lady's hands was of a better quality. The blade was also sharper. Su Zimo quietly memorized this and paid careful attention to Yao Xue's every move. He saw Yao Xue controlling the flying sword's movement from a distance. When her slim and fair finger pointed forward a little, the flying sword drew an arc in midair and slashed the beast-trapping hoop hard. Pa! Pa! Coinciding with the noise, the beast-trapping hoop broke. Having felt aggrieved for some time, the spirit monkey was thrilled after breaking free from the restraint. Oblivious to its bleeding wounds, it chattered "ow, ow," continuously. "Thank you." Su Zimo nodded to Yao Xue. "It's not a big deal." Yao Xue smiled. Suddenly, a doubt arose in her heart and she could not help asking, "Is this a spirit beast that you reared and nurtured?" Yao Xue could tell that this wild man who was clad in hide knew the spirit monkey. Most likely, he intervened in this matter because he wanted to save the spirit monkey and then saved her in the passing. In the cultivation world, many cultivators would rear and groom spirit beasts to improve their combat ability. Once the spirit beast had pledged a blood oath, they would not betray the cultivator. Otherwise, they would be punished by heaven and die from a reflux of their own blood flow. Upon hearing this question, Su Zimo frowned, shook his head and said, "He is my friend." "Ah?" Yao Xue blinked her eyes. She was very puzzled. It was really hard for her to imagine how a human could become friends with a spirit beast. Since ancient times, human and demon were of different paths and in constant fights with each other. Their relationship was getting from bad to worse. There was only one possibility of interaction, a master and slave relationship whereby one party had taken a blood oath. The term friend truly seemed a little unique when it came to the two different clans. After all, there was an ancient saying that those of different clans would not be of the same heart and mind. Su Zimo ignored Yao Xue. He approached the few corpses and picked up the 5 flying swords. Looking at the broken thunderbolt saber, Su Zimo felt a little hesitant. In the end, he still picked it up and tied it behind him. Suddenly, Su Zimo sensed great danger and turned behind. In the deep parts of the forest behind him, 2 dots of dimmed lights appeared in the darkness. The aura was terrifying. They were exuding a chilling murderous intent. Pust. Su Zimo exhaled a breath of cold air in shock. He said in a low voice, "It's a spirit demon. Quickly leave." Before Su Zimo spoke, the spirit monkey had already ran off. Although it was injured and limping, it could still move swiftly and agilely in the forest. Yao Xue was obviously a little panicky and at a loss of what to do. Su Zimo did not plan to bother about her initially. However, this lady had helped to chop the beast trapping hoop earlier. If he were to leave her behind, she would most probably die here given her current state. Su Zimo took a glance at her and said in a low voice, "Follow me." Just as he spoke, Su Zimo had already begun to move forward. Yao Xue's cheeks blushed faintly. She gritted her teeth and quickly followed him. Yao Xue had been poisoned with the Pisces aqua powder. She would not be impacted much if she could force out the poison and nurse her injuries. However, she had just been engaged in a fierce battle with the Joyful 7 earlier and almost exhausted all her spiritual powers. She could not even fly by standing on her flying sword. As such, she gradually could not endure the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. She felt her entire body heating up and limbs numb. Yao Xue was very clear of the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. No matter how strong-willed one was, one would not be able to endure the power of this drug. If I can't endure it, I will rather be devoured by this spirit demon than to be humiliated by others. Yao Xue bit her cherry-red lips and quietly decided. The spirit monkey had long disappeared after running off. That wild man in front of her appeared faintly from time to time. Yao Xue tried her best to chase up to him. The unknown spirit demon behind followed her closely. Its chilling gaze was like a thorn on her back, never disappearing for a moment. After running for a while, Yao Xue's legs were wobbly. She almost tripped and fell onto the ground. Although she was already prepared to be buried in the beast's mouth, she was terrified at the thought that she would be torn apart and devoured by the spirit demon. Sounds of the spirit demon treading on the grass behind her were getting closer and closer. The murderous intent was pervasive and cold. Yao Xue could even smell the fishy breath of spirit demon's mouth. However, at this very moment, Yao Xue did not have the energy to run anymore. Forget it. To think that I, Yao Xue, would die at this place. If father knows about this, sigh. Yao Xue was totally exhausted. She stood still, panting. She felt aggrieved and sorrowful. Closing her eyes, 2 streaks of tears flowed down quietly. At this moment, Yao Xue suddenly felt a strong and sturdy arm on her waist. Thereafter, her body felt light. Someone had taken her away from the place. "Miss, pardon me. There is a need to adapt to the change in circumstances." The man's voice rang beside her ears. Yao Xue opened her eyes wide and saw the side view of Su Zimo's face. So he didn't leave me behind. At this moment, Yao Xue had indescribable joy in her heart. She seemed to have found a place to vent all her grievances and sufferings now. Tears streamed down her face. Swoosh! Swoosh! Winds howled and shadows of trees retreated. The man held 6 flying swords with his left hand and 1 person with his right hand. Yet, this did not slow him down. Instead, he moved even faster. It was only until now did Yao Xue realize that this man did not use all of his strength during the earlier stretch of journey. Otherwise, she would not have been able to catch up with him. This person is not bad. Yao Xue was drained of energy. Leaning closer to the man who carried her, the Pisces aqua powder was continuously taking effect, causing her thoughts to run wild. Yao Xue was stunned. She quickly bit the tip of her tongue and tried hard to maintain soberness. Dashing left and limping right from time to time, the man seemed to be very familiar with the Zhanglang mountain range. Although Yao Xue could hear the spirit beast roaring, they did not encounter any attack. After an unknown period of time, Yao Xue felt dizzy and could no longer control her body. Yao Xue was gradually losing her consciousness. At this moment, the man's voice rang again, "Miss, wake up." Ooh. Ooh. Yao Xue's body was feverish and she was sleep-talking. Swoosh. Sounds of water could be heard. Ubiquitous feelings of coldness surrounded Yao Xue's burning body. Shivering, Yao Xue sobered up, her pair of eyes gradually regaining sight. This. Where is this? Shivering, Yao Xue asked and looked at the surroundings. This was a small and narrow mountain cave. She was in the middle of a cold lake, and there was nothing around it. Although the effect of the Pisces aqua powder was still present, the bone-chilling coldness from the lake waters constantly stimulated Yao Xue's nerves and allowed her to maintain sober. You are a foundation establishment cultivator. Coupled with the aid of this cold lake, you will most likely be able to diffuse the effects of the Pisces aqua powder. After saying these words, the man turned and left. Before leaving, that man found a few pieces of wolf skins and covered the entrance of this small and narrow cave. Sounds of the man's steps gradually faded away. Noticing all these, feelings of strangeness rose in Yao Xue's heart. After falling into the lake, her clothes were already drenched. Nevertheless, the man did not peep at her at all. He was also very meticulous. He covered the cave's entrance as he was afraid that she would feel awkward. Although the effect of Pisces aqua powder was strong, it did not constitute as a threat to foundation establishment cultivators. Yao Xue was feeling miserable that she did not have a chance to force the effect of the Pisces aqua powder out. Now that she was sober again, she quickly searched out an elixir from her storage bag and put it into her mouth. She then began to circulate the Spirit Heart Sutra. At this very moment, she could hear the man's voice mingled with the spirit monkey's chatters outside. A man and a monkey seemed to be communicating. The man's voice was neither loud nor soft. The volume was just audible to Yao Xue. Yao Xue felt her heart warmed. That man used such a method to tell her that he would always stay outside the cave. He was neither too far from nor too close to her. Hence, she could heal her injuries without any worries. This man is really interesting. Yao Xue smiled gently. She looked so beautiful and flawless. Chapter 23, Fallen Deep into a Vortex. Chapter 23, Fallen Deep into a Vortex. Su Zimo stepped out of the cave. The spirit monkey was waiting for him outside. The spirit monkey laughed gaga, pointing to the inside of the cave. He winked and made faces at Su Zimo with a strange expression. He even wiggled his body a few times. Su Zimo cursed and laughed. This damn monkey. You know everything. In actual fact, although Su Zimo had not heard of the joyful reunion powder, he could vaguely guess the purpose and effect of this drug. He had studied for more than a decade. Su Zimo would not take advantage of another person in a perilous state, not to mention that both of them met by chance. How are your injuries? Su Zimo asked. Whoa whoa. The spirit monkey waved its hands to express that it was fine. The spirit monkey's physique was amazing and body healing capabilities were extremely strong. It would recover in a few days' time. After being silent for a while, Su Zimo said softly, "I'll be leaving." Oh. The spirit monkey widened its big eyes. They were filled with puzzlement. In the cognition of the spirit monkey, Su Zimo was similar to him. He lived in the Zhonglang mountain range, had no one to rely on or turn to, and had no strings attached. Su Zimo pointed to the direction of Pingyang town and said, "There is a town about a few dozens of kilometers from Zhonglang mountain range. My home is over there. I have to go back now." The spirit monkey stopped shouting. Tears welled up in its eyes. It looked a little sad. Turning its back, it quietly licked the wounds on his body. Su Zimo felt a little complicated too. In Su Zimo's eyes, the spirit monkey was no longer the initial savior that it was. The spirit monkey was a friend whom he ate, lived and shared weals and woes with. Su Zimo had also thought of bringing the spirit monkey with him, but this was not realistic. On one hand, Su Zimo was worried that the spirit monkey could not get used to the outside world. On the other hand, he was worried that he would not be able to protect the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey was obstinate and unyielding. It was also eccentric and untamed. He did not know what kind of huge trouble it would stir up outside. Life outside might not be safer, happier and more carefree than life in the Zhonglang mountain range. "Comrade, you can come in." At this moment, the gentle voice of that lady could be heard coming from inside the cave. It broke the pin-drop silence outside the cave. Su Zimo patted the spirit monkey's shoulders and stepped into the cave first. Although the night was dark, after cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Su Zimo's eyesight was superb. At the sight of Yao Xue, he could not help being slightly stunned. Yao Xue's beauty was astonishing. Her beauty surpassed that of Shen Mengqi and was comparable to Dai Yu. It was just that she did not have the unique charisma on Dai Yu. Yao Xue had just gotten out of the cold lake. Her black tresses were still wet. She looked like a beauty who had just gotten out of a bath, with a touch of gentleness. She was very attractive. Su Zimo was a little distracted but resumed his normal self after a moment. Looking at the current Yao Xue, he guessed that the effect of the joyful reunion powder had already faded. Su Zimo nodded at Yao Xue and walked to his usual resting place. He searched out the few small cloth bags from the joyful clan and fidgeted with them curiously. "Comrade, I still don't know your name?" Yao Xue smiled and asked. "Su Zimo." Su Zimo responded without even looking up. He continued to fidget with the cloth bags in his hands. Yao Xue looked at Su Zimo, who was not far away. Recalling the embarrassing state that she had been in when poisoned by the joyful reunion powder, she could not help blushing and feeling shy. Yao Xue gently gritted her molars. Her distracted eyes glancing everywhere. She tried to appear casual as she asked, "Just now?" Just now, Miss lost your consciousness." Nothing happened. Before Yao Xue could finish her words, Su Zimo added. "Oh." Yao Xue furrowed her brows when she discovered that Su Zimo seemed reluctant to respond to her. He had been fiddling with the storage bags in his hands. She could not help feeling a little annoyed at heart. After watching by the side for a while, Yao Xue could not help asking, "Comrade, you don't seem to be a cultivator?" Su Zimo paused. He observed Yao Xue's eyes and said calmly, "I don't have a spirit root." At the sound of these words, there was not the slightest bit of contempt in Yao Xue's eyes. On the contrary, there was a flash of shock and regret. This subtle change made Su Zimo feel a little positive about Yao Xue. Yao Xue approached Su Zimo. She sat on the ground, not minding the dirt and mess. She said jokingly, "Then I won't address you as comrade anymore." It's only right that I call you Mr. Su. It's up to you. Su Zimo smiled. Yao Xue pointed at the cloth bags in Su Zimo's hands and said, "This thing is a storage bag. It is a very common item in the cultivation world. Almost everyone will bring one with him. It is a cosmos bag and can store a lot of items." Oh. However, the storage bag will only open after one uses spirit qi to stimulate it. While talking, Yao Xue took a storage bag and patted it with her palm. A pile of items dropped onto the ground. Most of them were bottles and jars. There were also dozens of stones the size of a fist. These are spirit stones. This is something that a cultivator cannot do without. There are 3 grades of it: supreme grade, middle grade and inferior grade. These few are inferior grade spirit stones. As for spirit root, it can be categorized into 5 grades: pseudo-spirit root, ordinary spirit root, superior class spirit root, earth spirit root and the most rare heaven spirit root. Yao Xue was very smart. Seemingly, she could tell that Su Zimo was very curious about cultivators. Hence, she tirelessly told him about the common information of cultivators. Daiyu hardly talked about such things. Hence, Su Zimo could not help but be immersed in this information. One party was humble to learn and the other party spoke without any reservation. Before they knew it, it was already dawn and one night had passed. Even if one was a cultivator, he would feel tired after having a sleepless night. Su Zimo looked apologetic. He got up and said, "Miss Yao, regarding this information on cultivators, thank you for teaching me generously. I have gained a lot." Yao Xue smiled and said, "If you wish to thank me, give me 3 pieces of wolf skins. This is also my purpose for this trip." There were hundreds of wolf skins inside this cave. Su Zimo waved his big hands and said, "Take as much as you want." Yao Xue said, "Actually, everything on the spirit beasts are treasures. To a talisman master, hides are a necessity. You have so many spirit beast hides in the cave. If you sell them, you will be able to get many spirit stones in return." Yao Xue had told Su Zimo earlier. In the cultivation world, there were 4 types of cultivators with a very special status. Their status was even higher than that of ordinary cultivators. The elixir refinement master could refine elixirs. There were numerous kinds of elixirs with a wide scope of usage. To cultivators, elixirs were indispensable. The weapon refinement master could refine various types and grades of spirit weapons. To cultivators, spirit weapons could significantly improve their ability and were also indispensable. The talisman master could create talismans. The augmentation talisman that Yao Xue used to block the attacks of Joyful 7 earlier was one of such talismans. Without the augmentation talisman, Yao Xue would have long been defeated and captured. The array formation master was proficient in the formation of arrays. Many of the major clans had major defensive array formations. If the cultivators were to fall into any of the arrays set up by opponents, they would be restrained everywhere and their lives might even be threatened. Of course, the prerequisite for becoming one of these 4 types of cultivators was the possession of a spirit root and becoming a qi refinement warrior. Su Zimo shook his head and said, "Even if I can exchange for spirit stones, I have no use for them." "Why not?" Yao Xue said immediately, "You have to know that one piece of inferior grade spirit stone is worth 1,000 taels of gold. In some trading houses of the cultivation world, various and numerous kinds of items are available for sale. One will have to use spirit stones to trade for these items. If you have enough spirit stones, you can even assign some assignments and engage the Qi refinement warriors to complete them. Of course, the higher the realm that the Qi refinement warrior is at, the higher the cost of hiring." Upon hearing this, Su Zimo's heart wavered. He had a vague feeling that these spirit stones might really be of some use. After pondering for a while, Su Zimo asked again, "At what realms were the Joyful 7 at?" Yao Xue said, those two guarding the spirit monkey were the weakest. They are level 5 Qi refinement warriors. The one who escaped and the fat-faced one were the strongest. They are both level 8 Qi refinement warriors. The remaining 3 were level 7 Qi refinement warriors. Su Zimo nodded. 1 year of training and experience had not been in vain. Now, even level 8 Qi refinement warrior was not his match. Su Zimo even had a hunch that level 9 Qi refinement warrior would also be in danger if he were to close in on him. Of course, this was on the pretext that the other party would not execute the sword kinesis flight at the first instance. In fact, sword kinesis flight would deplete a lot of spirit Qi. In fights and battles, be it Qi refinement warrior or foundation establishment cultivator, they would save as much spirit Qi as possible for use in attacking the opponent. With both feet on the ground, the other party could still defeat you by controlling the flying sword even if one were to execute sword kinesis flight. Hence, in the midst of killings and fightings, almost none of the Qi refinement warriors or foundation establishment cultivators would execute sword kinesis flight and attack at the same time. This would not only cause distraction but also deplete a lot of spirit Qi. Of course, it would be a different matter when it came to the perfected golden core realm. The ability of the perfected golden core was vastly different from the two mentioned before. One of the abilities was that the perfected golden core could completely lift himself off the ground without relying on any foreign object. Where do we go to sell these items? Su Zimo had quite a huge harvest yesterday. He had 6 storage bags. There were about 700 pieces of spirit stones in total. In addition, there were other flying swords, elixirs and so on. Yao Xue said, in the Great Zhou dynasty, the largest trading house is the Sky Treasure Pavilion. Sky Treasure Pavilion will set up branch stores in the town of cities where cultivators gather. Most of them are situated in the cities of the various states where the kings live in. Sky Treasure Pavilion? Su Zimo said in slight puzzlement. He frowned. There seems to be one in Zhonglang City. When he was studying at Zhonglang City previously, Su Zimo had unintentionally heard of Sky Treasure Pavilion. He heard that it was a place that was even more mysterious than the palace. The gathering of the cultivators? Zhonglang City, Sky Treasure Pavilion? Su Zimo narrowed his eyes, seemingly pondering about something. Since they are cultivators, why would they intervene in pugilistic and royal court affairs of the mortal world? Su Zimo asked again. Yao Xue explained, the Qi refinement warrior's lifespan is almost similar to that of ordinary people. Even a foundation establishment cultivator's lifespan is at most over 100 years. It is so hard to attain alchemy. When they see that they have no hopes of attaining alchemy, most of the Qi refinement warriors and foundation establishment cultivators will enter the royal court and enjoy a materialistic and carefree life in their remaining years. Of course, when there are traces of cultivators in various states, most of them belong to the Qi refinement warriors. However, it is said that in the Great Zhou dynasty, one of the armies is solely formed by the foundation establishment cultivators and there are even some perfected golden cores in the dynasty. This is the reason why the Great Zhou dynasty stands towering like a giant and dominates the various states. Countries such as Deqi and Yan all belonged to the vassal states and had to pay tribute to the Great Zhou dynasty every year. Su Zimo suddenly had a realization. It is no wonder the Great Zhou dynasty hardly intervenes in the battles of the various states. This is because the rise and fall of any states will not threaten the rule of the Great Zhou dynasty. That's right. Yao Xue nodded. After pausing for a moment, Yao Xue smiled and said in a profound manner, that Zhonglang City is one of the cities in the state but Sky Treasure Pavilion set up a branch there. It seems that the city lord of this city is conceiving a huge plan. Sky Treasure Pavilion would only set up a branch in places where the cultivators gather. This implied that Zhonglang City had many cultivators. What did the city lord of Zhonglang want to do? Was it related to the Su family? Su Zimo vaguely felt that the Su family had very likely gotten itself into a massive vortex, and it would be shattered into pieces in the event of any slip-up. Chapter 24, Sky Treasure Gold Badge. Chapter 24, Sky Treasure Gold Badge. Coincidentally, I also wanted to go to the Sky Treasure Pavilion to trade for something. Where is Zhanglang City? Bring me there, please. Yao Xue said smilingly. Su Zimo could tell that Yao Xue was very sensitive and considerate. She was worried that he could not enter the Sky Treasure Pavilion on his own as he was not a Qi refinement warrior. As such, she told him that for fear of hurting his self-esteem. Su Zimo did not expose her lie either. He said, "Let's go. It is also time that I leave Zhanglang mountain range." Su Zimo packed up many spirit beast hides. Besides these, he also put away the storage bags and flying swords harvested yesterday in Yao Xue's storage bag temporarily to avoid appearing too ostentatious. Outside the cave, the sky was already bright. The spirit monkey curled himself up in a corner with his back facing the two of them. It seemed to be sound asleep. "Let's go. Don't disturb him," Yao Xue said softly. Su Zimo shook his head. He went to the side of the spirit monkey and kicked it without giving any warning. He chided smilingly, "Stop pretending to be dead. Wake up and send me off." This kick was very sudden and forceful. Even Yao Xue was taken aback. Unexpectedly, the spirit monkey who was initially sleeping soundly seemed to be long prepared for this. Swoosh! It dashed up and avoided Su Zimo's underhanded kick. Teeth gnashing and jaws opened, it waved both arms at Su Zimo with a face full of disdain, and rolled its eyes from time to time. Su Zimo smiled faintly and said, "If you don't want to send me off, so be it. Look at you. Damn monkey. Be smarter next time. Don't foolishly go lose to the cultivators when you meet them." Humph. The spirit monkey snorted and waved its fists. "I'm leaving." With his back facing the spirit monkey, Su Zimo waved his hands and left the cave with Yao Xue. Not far away, Su Zimo sensed something and instinctively turned back. He saw the spirit monkey standing at the cave entrance and watching him from afar. Under the reflection of the morning glow, the tall and big figure looked a little lonely and desolate. At the sight of Su Zimo turning back, the spirit monkey felt that he could no longer stifle his expression. Lifting its head proudly, it turned and wriggled back into the cave, disappearing from sight. Yao Xue noticed this and said softly, "In the end, it came out to send you off." Su Zimo hung his head silently. Yao Xue said, "Since you can't bear to leave it, bring it along." After a moment of silence, Su Zimo looked up and smiled. Pretending to be casual, he said, "It's okay. Don't need to bother about him. This monkey has great ambitions. It wants to be the lord of Zhanglang mountain range, a happy and carefree king of the mountains." Yao Xue found a flying sword from the storage bag and suspended it in the air. She jumped onto it. She then turned to Su Zimo and said, "Come up. It'll be faster in this way." Su Zimo did not decline. He leaped onto the flying sword immediately. Swoosh! Lights from the sword flashed. The two had already disappeared from the place that they were at lightning speed. Sword kinesis flight was as graceful and swift as a startled swan. It was breezy, carefree and indescribable. Su Zimo would be lying to himself if he were to say that he was not envious. However, he was on the path of demon cultivation. He would have to cultivate the core formation section to rise from the ground and fly in the air. After Tendon's transformation, there were 4 major realms: bone strengthening, marrow cleansing, organs refinement, and orifice clearing. He did not know how long it would take. After 1.5 years, he felt completely different upon returning to Zhanglang City. Looking at Sanglang's city from the heights while on Yao Xue's sword, Su Zimo discovered that this city was much bigger than he had thought it to be. The two landed in a quiet and deep small alley. There was a wall at the end of the small alley. Before Yao Xue reached the wall, she pointed with her finger and released a flow of spirit qi. Before hitting the wall, it had turned as clear as a water curtain at that instant. Yao Xue explained, "This is a kind of array formation. It has the effect of a visual bulwark. Mortals without spirit qi will not be able to discover this place. There are two ways to enter the Sky Treasure Pavilion. First, become a cultivator. Second, possess the Sky Treasure Badge." Su Zimo nodded and followed Yao Xue in crossing the wall. It was spacious and bright on the other side. A sparkling and glittering palace appeared right in front of them. 3 words, "Sky Treasure Pavilion," was written on the plaque. Under the bottom right corner of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, there was an exquisite and small word branch, representing that this was a store branch of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. After entering the main hall of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, one could see many Qi refinement warriors loitering around. The main hall was filled with plenty of treasures collected in the cultivation world. There were elixirs, spirit items, talismans, cultivation technique secret manuals and so on. It had everything that one wished for. "Follow me upstairs. These items downstairs are all ordinary ones," Yao Xue whispered. Under the envious gaze of many Qi refinement warriors, Su Zimo followed Yao Xue upstairs. These Qi refinement warriors were aware that only Foundation establishment cultivators or those with the Sky Treasure Badge could be granted access to the second floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, it was too difficult to attain a Sky Treasure Badge. Even the most inferior grade Sky Treasure Bronze Badge required a certain number of spirit stones in exchange for the eligibility. On the second floor, there were obviously less cultivation world treasures. However, each of the items looked better than those downstairs. Apart from a few Qi refinement warriors who were selling items, no one else was present. It was very quiet. Yao Xue knocked on the table. She flashed a piece of exquisite, gold badge and said in a low voice, "Get your pavilion manager out." The Qi refinement warrior was startled instantly. He responded to the rudeness with a flattering smile. "Senior, please wait here for a moment." Very soon, a figure dressed like a businessman hurried over. He was rather plump but swift in his movements. "Selling something?" Yao Xue went straight to the point. She took out the hundreds of spirit beast hides, various elixirs and the few flying swords. Su Zimo had already planned to sell everything and exchange them for spirit stones. It will be a total of 3,070 pieces of inferior-grade spirit stones. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion calculated before he wiped his sweat and said. Yao Xue waved her hands and said undoubtedly. "Let's round it to 3,100. This, okay." The manager hesitated slightly but agreed thereafter. Su Zimo suddenly realized that Yao Xue seemed to be born of an extraordinary origin. Every move of hers was filled with a strong aura of elegance. 3,100 pieces of spirit stones. Coupled with the 700 other pieces in the storage bags of the Joyful Seven, Su Zimo had close to 4,000 spirit stones now. This was also considered a huge wealth amongst the high-level Qi refinement warriors. "How do you intend to use this sum of spirit stones?" Yao Xue asked. Su Zimo had some plans in his heart. He said in a deep voice, "I want to refine 2 weapons. 1 bow and 1 saber." After the battle with Qi refinement warriors at Sanglang mountain range, Su Zimo discovered his own weakness. He was unable to leave the ground and fly in the sky. If he were to encounter Qi refinement warriors who used sword kinesis flight in the future, Su Zimo would deal with them with his bow and arrows. As for the saber, apart from protecting himself and attacking the enemy, it could also block the spirit item of the Qi refinement warrior and take the chance to reduce the distance separating them. Besides inferior grade, middle grade, superior grade, supreme grade weapons, there was also another type of spirit weapon called pseudo-spirit weapon. The reasons why spirit weapons were powerful were twofold. On one hand, the materials used to refine the weapons were rare spirit items. On the other hand, after numerous hammering and refining by the weapon refinement master, the impurities had been removed. The weapon would not break easily as it was both hard and strong. Most importantly, one had to look at the spirit pattern condensed on it to analyze the grade of the spirit weapon. An inferior grade spirit weapon would have one spirit pattern. Amongst the Joyful Seven, 2 of them had flying swords of this grade. The flying sword in Yao Xue's hands was a middle grade spirit weapon as it had 2 spirit patterns. Weapons with 3 spirit patterns were superior grade while those with 4 spirit patterns were of supreme grade. Before the cultivators engaged in a fight, it would inject the spirit chi into the spirit weapon. This would invigorate the spirit pattern to shine. The more lines there were, the more powerful the spirit weapon. The so-called pseudo-spirit weapon was referring to weapons made of the same materials as the real ones. They were also made by the weapon refinement master, but there was no spirit pattern condensed on them. To Su Zimo, whether the weapons had spirit pattern or not did not make a difference. He could not invigorate them at all. As long as the weapon was strong and hard enough to block the impact of spirit weapons and cause death and injury to the Qi refinement warrior, it would suffice. The manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion said, "It costs very little to refine 2 pseudo-spirit weapons. Including the costs of materials and hiring the weapon refinement master, a few hundred inferior grade spirit stones are enough. How long will it take?" Su Zimo could feel that the Su family was going to face a calamity soon. He wanted to improve his ability as soon as possible. At least 3 days. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said. On a separate note, it is easy to refine the bow but not the bowstring. Yao Xue pointed at Su Zimo's waist and smiled gently. The python tendon on your waist can be used as a bowstring. Su Zimo was still clad in a beast hide and a python tendon was used as a belt. Yao Xue reached out her hands and gently pushed Su Zimo, covering her nose. Quickly bathe and change your clothes. You can remove the python tendon then. Su Zimo coughed lightly to conceal his embarrassment. He quickly followed the 2 female waiting staff and left the second floor of Sky Treasure Pavilion temporarily. Not long after, Su Zimo returned to the Sky Treasure Pavilion. When Yao Xue glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, she could not help feeling stunned. At this moment, Su Zimo was dressed in a green robe. He had shaved away his stubble. Bright, clear eyes and delicate features, he exuded a strong scholarly aura. He was like a different person from before. Who is this? Yao Xue turned both her palms, leaned forward slightly and moved closer to him. She tilted her head and asked with a trace of a smile in her eyes. Su Zimo's gaze was bright and clear. He smiled but was silent. A young master, indeed. Addressing you as young master Su is really not wrong. Yao Xue smiled and said. Su Zimo could barely endure this. He cupped his fists and said, "Miss Yao Xue, you're being humorous. All right, I'll not tease you anymore." Yao Xue waved her hands and asked, "What do you intend to use the remaining spirit stones for? How many spirit stones do I need to hire a Qi refinement warrior?" Su Zimo planned to hire 1 Qi refinement warrior to protect the Su family. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said, "This depends on the level that the Qi refinement warrior is at. The higher the better. For a level 7 Qi refinement warrior, 5 pieces of inferior grade spirit stones a day will be enough. For a level 8 Qi refinement warrior, you need 10 pieces a day. For a level 9 Qi refinement warrior, you need 100 pieces." Su Zimo did some mental calculations. He had a total of over 3,000 pieces of spirit stones left. Of course, it was good to hire a level 9 Qi refinement warrior. However, he only had enough spirit stones to hire one of them for a month. No one could guarantee when the danger would come. On the other hand, hiring a level 8 Qi refinement warrior could protect the Su family for an entire year. It was relatively more cost-effective. After pondering deeply for a while, Su Zimo said, "I'll hire a level 8 Qi refinement warrior for a period of 1 year." Okay. The manager waved his hands. One of the female waiting staff nodded and walked towards the main hall on the first floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. Yao Xue explained. There are always new missions at the main hall of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. If the Qi refinement warriors are interested in them, they will look for the hirers accordingly. After pausing for a while, Yao Xue passed the piece of gold badge in her hands to Su Zimo. She said, "This is the Sky Treasure Pavilion gold badge. With this badge, you can get half the price for every item of purchase when you come here next time." So much? Su Zimo was shocked. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion who was standing at the side explained, there are 3 types of badges in the Sky Treasure Pavilion. The lowest grade is the bronze badge which will give you a 10% discount. Next is the silver badge that gives a 20% discount, followed by the gold badge. This item is too precious and costly. I can't accept it. Upon hearing the manager's explanation, how could Su Zimo not know how precious this gold badge was? Accept it. I still have more of it. Not allowing any further deliberations, Yao Xue tucked the item into Su Zimo's arms and reminded him, "You have to hide it well and don't let anyone see it. Otherwise, you will attract trouble easily." Su Zimo frowned and wanted to decline again. Yao Xue's face turned stiff. "You saved my life. Isn't my life worth this piece of lousy gold badge?" Su Zimo was speechless. The manager at the side rolled his eyes continuously, muttering in his heart, "Lousy gold badge, there are less than 10 such gold badges in the entire Great Zhou dynasty. This madam is so generous. I don't know where this poor lad's good fortune came from." At this moment, Su Zimo was unaware that the Sky Treasure gold badge in his hands was not an ordinary one. Even if he had the ordinary Sky Treasure gold badge, he could only get a 30% discount at the Sky Treasure Pavilion. There was only one place with Sky Treasure gold badges that could give a 50% discount. Chapter 25, Trouble. Chapter 25, Trouble. After stepping out of the Sky Treasure Pavilion, it was already close to noon. Su Zimo turned and looked at Yao Xue. He said sincerely, "I must thank Miss Yao Xue for today's matter. Call me Yao Xue." "That. Okay then." Su Zimo hesitated slightly before he agreed. At the sight of Su Zimo nodding, Yao Xue pursed her lips and smiled. She said immediately, "I'll call you Zimo then." Su Zimo. Yao Xue took a sideways glance at Su Zimo and asked, "Where will Zimo be going next?" Su Zimo pondered deeply and said, "I have to stay in Songlang City for a few days to wait for the 2 spirit weapons to be refined. At the same time, I will check out if any level 8 Qi refinement warriors are taking up the mission." After thinking, Yao Xue said, "I'll return to my clan then. I won't keep you company. Have a good trip. We will meet again if we have fate." Su Zimo nodded. Yao Xue jumped onto the flying sword. When she was about to leave the Sky Treasure Pavilion, she suddenly looked back and gave a charming smile. "Not if we have fate. We will definitely meet again." Upon finishing her words, Yao Xue leaped onto her sword and left. She disappeared from Su Zimo's sight soon after. Su Zimo did not think much of it. He left the small alley of the Sky Treasure Pavilion and looked for an inn nearby to stay at. 3 days later, in the mansion of the city lord, Chao Gang, the wolf guard, stepped in and bowed to pay his respects. He said in a low voice, "City lord, my subordinate's guard saw Su Zimo in the city. The strange thing is that, this lad seemed to have appeared out of thin air. No one saw him entering the city. Luo Tianwu, the city lord of Canglang City, nodded and said, "Yes, perhaps we have been negligent. No need to worry. I have long received news of this and sent someone to test him. Since we are making use of him to kill, we have to test if this blade is sharp enough. I heard that, some time ago, Su Hong had a narrow escape from death in the capital of the country of Yen. 16 years of preparation work fell short in the last battle. He nearly lost his life. Now, the capital of the country of Yen is tightly guarded. Many Qi refinement warriors were gathered near the king of Yen. What can this Su Zimo do?" Chao Gang frowned slightly. Luo Tianwu smiled and said, "Su Hong has black armored cavalry under his wings. He was powerful but also too ambitious. It is expected that his assassination of the king of Yen would fail. But this second young master Su is different. No one views him as a threat. The more you neglect one's existence, the easier it is for him to carry out a successful assassination." Su Zimo had been in Canglang City for 3 days but did not hear any news from Sky Treasure Pavilion. The hiring of Qi refinement warrior was not as easy as he expected it to be. Furthermore, he wanted to hire a level 8 Qi refinement warrior. Su Zimo felt a little vexed. He was prepared to have a meal at the first floor of the inn. Just as he arrived downstairs, he could hear people sneering. Someone said in an eccentric manner, "Yo, isn't this second young master Su who has been reduced to an inferior commoner? Why do you still have the shame to come to Canglang City?" Su Zimo slanted his eyes and saw a seemingly wealthy young man with a graceful bearing waving a fan. Sneering continuously, he had a look of contempt on his face. 2 middle-aged men were by his sides. They were bright-eyed and had a restrained aura. They were seemingly guarding the young man who was sitting in between them. This young man's name was Chu Liang. He could not take the hardship of learning martial arts but was also reluctant to focus on his studies quietly. With the power of his family clan as his backing, he lounged around all day long, bullying the young and weak. Su Zimo had some impression of this man as he had been his classmate back then when studying in Canglang City previously. Although he could not see eye to eye with this man's conduct, the two never had any animosity between them. Su Zimo cast a faint glance at Chu Liang. His gaze was calm and his expression normal. He then turned back and ascended the stairs. The Su family already had enemies on another land. Su Zimo did not wish to attract more trouble. It was pointless to make more enemies. Chu Liang sneered. "Boss Li, when did Yuan start to take in inferior commoners? Break both legs of this inferior commoner and throw him out, in case he affects my appetite." This. The boss of the inn looked like he was in a difficult position. "Yes? You want to break both my legs?" Su Zimo halted his steps and turned gradually, his gaze sweeping across the main lobby. The guests in the inn did not seem to be ordinary commoners. They had weapons on the table beside them. Although they were also eating and drinking, their gazes inadvertently landed on him. Moreover, there were traces of hostility in their eyes. This was not a chance encounter. The other party deliberately came here to seek trouble. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had figured it out. Su Zimo strode towards Chu Liang. The 2 middle-aged men by Chu Liang's side showed obvious signs of nervousness. The muscles tightened as they lowered their palms, placed them on the weapon on the waist. Su Zimo smiled and sat on the seat opposite Chu Liang. "Who told you to sit down?" Chu Liang hollered. Bang! He slammed his hands on the table. Clang! One after another, the surrounding diners rose from their seats, unsheathing their weapons. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged. Without looking sideways, he did not seem bothered as he took Chu Liang's wine jar and poured himself a cup of wine. The two middle-aged men opposite him looked grave and solemn. They moved towards the middle, blocking Chu Liang behind them. Su Zimo had not made any moves and did not even reveal any trace of murderous aura. Yet, the two middle-aged men felt uneasy and had chills running up their spines. The two of you are perfected Khanate experts, right? Su Zimo lifted the wine cup and asked casually. So what if we are? One of them responded. The two of you. Su Zimo raised his head and drained the strong wine in his cup. He then shook his head. He continued to say, won't be able to protect him. The moment he put down the wine cup, Su Zimo made his move. Snap! The wine cup dropped on the tabletop. The fall was neither hard nor soft, but the entire table suddenly split open. Su Zimo closed in and flipped his palms, enshrouding the top of heads of the two perfected Khanate experts. His moves were sudden and he attacked two people at the same time. The two middle-aged men were terrified. The aura of Su Zimo's palm strike was powerful and suffocating. They could even smell a gust of bloody stench at the wave of his palm. In the blink of an eye, the graceful scholar had transformed into a man-eating beast. The two men unsheathed their weapons immediately to block the attack. Swoosh! There was a deafening and crisp sound. Two extremely sharp weapons had actually been slammed to pieces by Su Zimo's palm. They were scattered on the ground. Bang! Bang! Su Zimo moved forward and kicked both his legs casually. The two Khanate experts were hurled outside. Horror filled their eyes. Their chests were crushed and they were vomiting fresh blood. They were almost dead. In comparison to the spirit beasts in Tsanglang mountain range, the close combat techniques of the two men before him were really too poor. If Su Zimo were to use all of his strength, the two of them including their weapons would be crushed instantly with the pressure of this palm. Chu Liang was so scared that his face was drained of all colors. Never did he expect that the two Khanate experts that he relied on most would turn invalid in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, Su Zimo was already nearing him. Su Zimo grabbed his neck and lifted him up in the air. It was too fast. When Chu Liang landed in Su Zimo's hands, the surrounding diners had not even recovered from their shock. No matter how much they wanted to dash forward, they were fearful of the consequences and full of reservations. What are you doing? Release my family's young master. A loud and stern voice rang from the surrounding. Su Zimo did not seem to have heard it. He just looked at Chu Liang with an imperceptible smile on his face. I heard that you want to break both of my legs. Chu Liang's neck was strangled. His face turned purplish-blue as he let out a weird sound from his mouth. Su Zimo's gaze gradually turned cold. He swung his legs. Pa! Pa! Sounds of bones cracking could be heard coming from Chu Liang's knees. They had been crushed by Su Zimo's kick in that instant. Chu Liang was in so much pain that beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His entire body was shivering, but he could not bring himself to say a word. Who told you to come? Su Zimo pressed him. Chu Liang could not catch his breath. He rolled his eyes and looked like he was going to faint at any point in time. At this very moment, a loud shout could be heard from outside the door. Stop! A man clad in armor with a firm and resolute face was standing at the entrance of the inn. He was leading numerous guards. He dashed in with large and vigorous slides. This man was none other than Chao Gang, one of the 5 wolf guards of Tsanglang city. Fighting is forbidden in the city. Su Zimo, quickly release that man. Chao Gang stepped forward and hollered. At the same time, Chao Gang also moved forward 2 steps and whispered into Su Zimo's ears. Second young master Su, the city lord would like to meet you. Su Zimo narrowed both his eyes. A thought flashed in his mind and he vaguely understood what was happening. Su Zimo waved his hands and flung Chu Liang aside nonchalantly. "Bring criminal Su Zimo back to the city lord." Chao Gang shouted again. Numerous guards behind him moved forward and surrounded Su Zimo. Yet, no one cuffed him up. Su Zimo was expressionless, but he sneered in his heart. He followed Chao Gang and the group and left the inn. Chapter 26, Heard about the Secret. Chapter 26, Heard about the Secret. This was the first meeting between Su Zimo and the city lord of Zhanglang City. It was very difficult to read the city lord's mind just by looking into his eyes. He was expressionless and seemingly very deep and scheming. Luo Tianwu was also sizing up Su Zimo at the same time. His first impression of Su Zimo was a cultured and polite man, no different from other scholars. If he had not known in advance the many deeds of Su Zimo in Pingyang town, it was very hard for Luo Tianwu to imagine that such a weak and frail-looking scholar could actually subdue the two big family clans. Immediately after, he sensed that Su Zimo was mysterious and unfathomable. The gazes of both parties collided in mid-air. Very soon after, Luo Tianwu revealed a smile first. He said in a loud and clear voice, "I've long heard about the famous second young master Su. We finally meet today. Please have a seat." From the side, a slouching old servant dressed in a gray robe walked over. Gray-haired, he had a gaunt face and cloudy eyes. He carried a chair and put it carefully in front of Su Zimo. Su Zimo's gaze seemed casual as it swept across the old servant. He did not decline and took the seat immediately. Luo Tianwu was very polite to him. However, there was more to this case and it became more evident that this meeting was not so simple. There must be something going on when things occur out of the ordinary. What was the status, power and prestige of a city lord? Luo Tianwu had never invited Su Zimo when the latter attained scholarly honors previously, much less his inferior status currently. The gray-robed old servant stood beside Su Zimo and filled a cup of tea for Su Zimo respectfully. Su Zimo's thoughts were deep as he cast a profound gaze at the gray-robed old servant. With an imperceptible smile, he said, "You served me tea. This must have been hard on you." The gray-robed old servant paused for a moment. He placed the teapot on the table without any expression. Thereafter, he retreated to stand behind Luo Tianwu and did not utter a word. Upon hearing this, a beam of light flashed across Luo Tianwu's eyes but disappeared after a moment. Su Zimo's words seemed unintentional but others were not sure of the implied meaning. He could be mocking himself for his inferior status or pitying the gray-robed old servant for his old age. Of course, there was another possibility. This lad had already seen through the Qi refinement warrior identity of this old servant dressed in shabby and gray clothes. This fellow is not easy to deal with. Luo Tianwu furrowed his brows secretly. The gray-robed old servant had hid himself very well. Yet, he could not deceive the spirit perception that Su Zimo had attained via his near-death experiences. Without a word, Su Zimo raised his teacup and sipped tea in a leisurely manner. Luo Tianwu was silent too. His fingertips were knocking on the table neither lightly nor hard. About 8 minutes passed. The pin-drop silence in the room was frightening. Only sounds of fingertips knocking on the table were resonating. The atmosphere was stifling. The smile on Luo Tianwu's face had already disappeared. In such a circumstance, ordinary people would not be able to withstand the pressure. They would have long spoken up to ease the atmosphere. However, right from the beginning, Su Zimo's expression did not change the slightest bit. His gaze was as calm as an old monk who was meditating. This lad is only 18 years old and he has such a calm and mature temperament. It is very tricky to deal with him. Luo Tianwu muttered in his heart. He was already feeling a little restless. In actual fact, this was a tactic of psychological pressure. Whoever could not endure the situation and spoke would inevitably be on the back foot. Luo Tianwu had initially wanted to subdue Su Zimo in the first instance. However, he did not expect to hit him on the wrong spot. He felt very upset. "Isn't second young Master Su curious about why I invited you today?" Luo Tianwu asked smilingly. Su Zimo put down his teacup in a leisurely manner and glanced sideways at Luo Tianwu. He said calmly, "May I ask City Lord to give me an explicit reason? The two young masters of the Su family are both cream of the crop. Young Master Su's patience and endurance, and second young Master Su hiding your light under a bushel. The 5 wolf guards under my wings and me admire you guys greatly." Luo Tianwu praised. Su Zimo frowned slightly and said, "City Lord, you don't need to probe further. Please come straight to the point. You're straightforward. I admire people like second young Master Su." Luo Tianwu gave a slight smile. "Your older brother has failed to assassinate the King of Yen. He is severely injured and bedridden now. I know that second young Master Su's heart must be filled with fury." Upon hearing this, Su Zimo's countenance changed. Older brother assassinated the King of Yen? He was injured? Su Zimo had not returned for a year. Hence, he did not know that such a severe matter had happened to the Su family. Why did older brother assassinate the King of Yen? Could the King of Yen be the Su family's enemy? Observing the change in Su Zimo's expression, Luo Tianwu was slightly stunned. He asked, "Don't tell me that second young Master Su doesn't know about this? I am not aware." Su Zimo shook his head and endured the urge to rush back to Pingyang town. Luo Tianwu felt that he had regained some victory with this. He revealed a slight smile and said, "Actually, I still admire and respect Su Mu, Lord Wooding, the most." How powerful and prestigious were the black-armored cavalry under his wings then? Which of the surrounding states doesn't know the famous Su Mu? It is sheer pity. Su Mu. Upon hearing this name, for some unknown reason, Su Zimo seemingly felt pangs of pain in his heart. Su Zimo had already sensed that this man called Su Mu was very likely his father. He only heard Luo Tianwu continuing with his words, 16 years ago, we heard that Su Mu had been framed and schemed against by villains. The King of Yen gave orders to annihilate his entire family. At that time, I was also wringing my fists in sorrow and pain. I mourned for the loss of an outstanding hero. Fortunately, Lord Wooding's bloodline is still inexistent. The two young masters of the Su family escaped. Upon hearing this, Su Zimo already understood in his heart. He had found the answers to many of his doubts. Without a word, Su Zimo's lanky body rose and headed outside. "Where is second young Master Su going?" Luo Tianwu asked quickly. Su Zimo's face was solemn. He turned and looked at Luo Tianwu. Visible red veins could be seen in his eyes. It was extremely frightening. Luo Tianwu was stunned. The gray-robed old man behind him moved a step back instinctively. He slipped his hands into his chest and searched the storage bag inside. In fact, Luo Tianwu did not know that Su Zimo was unaware of the Su family's background. He did not expect that Su Zimo would react so greatly. Luo Tianwu calmed himself down and took a deep breath. He said in a deep voice, "I know that second young Master Su is keen to take revenge. I also wish to seek justice for Lord Wooding. Why don't we do this? I have spies in the city where the King of Yen lives in. I can try my best to help second young Master Su get close to the King of Yen. With second young Master Su's capability, we will definitely be able to execute the King of Yen and avenge Lord Wooding if we join forces." Su Zimo shut his eyes. After some time, he gradually opened them. The blood color in his eyes slowly faded and his eyes regained brightness and clarity. This is a private vendetta of the Su family. Why should I bother the city lord? Su Zimo asked. Luo Tianwu smiled and said, Lord Wooding is the person that I admire most in my life. You can only deceive children with such words. Before Luo Tianwu could finish his words, Su Zimo interrupted him ruthlessly. Su Zimo's words were considered a great form of disrespect for the city lord. However, the smile on Luo Tianwu's face did not lessen. He continued to say, Second young master Su is a little angered. You're the one who sent Chu Liang to the inn, right? Su Zimo interrupted Luo Tianwu again and said calmly. Luo Tianwu retracted his smile. There was a flash of murderous intent in his eyes, but it disappeared a moment later. He questioned back, what makes second young master Su say that? From the moment that I made the first move till I subdued Chu Liang, it only took a duration of 10 breaths. Su Zimo pointed to Chao Gang at the side and added, Guard Chao suddenly dashed in. It's a little too fast. It was as if this had been prearranged. I only happened to pass by. Chao Gang explained hurriedly. Luo Tianwu waved his hands to stop Chao Gang from continuing with his words. It was just a short interaction and Luo Tianwu realized that this kind of small tricks could not deceive the person before him. To force an explanation would only make a joke out of themselves. Su Zimo gave a sneer and turned back. He paused his steps when he reached the doorsteps and said calmly, if City Lord Luo is sincere in helping the Su family, I, Su Zimo, will naturally be grateful to you. However, I don't like to be made use of by others. City Lord Luo, you better watch your conduct. Having finished his words, Su Zimo left without even turning back. When Su Zimo's figure disappeared from the residence of the city lord, Luo Tianwu's expression turned solemn and sinister. There was already a handprint on the sandalwood table beside him. This green and young lad. He actually dared to be so arrogant in front of me. Luo Tianwu was enraged. He gritted his teeth and scolded. After some time, Luo Tianwu gave a long sigh. He turned and asked, Sir, how do you feel about this lad? At this moment, the grey-robed old servant straightened his back. His eyes were clear and bright. There were no signs of the earlier old and fatigued look. When he heard Luo Tianwu's question, he said in a deep voice, Second young master Su is not simple. Although he is not a Qi refinement warrior, he could see through my identity as a Qi refinement warrior with one glance. This lad's hands are certainly stained with a lot of fresh blood. When he was angered earlier, I could feel trepidation in my heart. He is a very dangerous man. Oh. Luo Tianwu raised his brows slightly. He asked again, what will happen if you fight with him? The grey-robed old servant's expression was proud. He said, I am a level 8 Qi refinement warrior. How can a mortal compete with me? However, after pausing for a while, the grey-robed old servant changed his stance. Given this lad's temperament and ability, he has a high chance of success in assassinating the King of Yen. As to whether he could escape the capital alive. The grey-robed old servant smiled but did not speak a word. I am not concerned whether he can escape the capital where the King of Yen lives at. As long as the King of Yen is dead, the country will become leaderless and there will certainly be chaos. It will be the best time for me to invade the city and declare myself as the king. Luo Tianwu smiled. Everything was under his control. Chapter 27, Sanguine Crystal Bow, Cold Moon Saber. Chapter 27, Sanguine Crystal Bow, Cold Moon Saber. Men of letters preferred swords. Even if they did not know any martial arts, they liked to carry a sword with them, as they appeared to be noble and elegant with it. The saber was used by the armies on the battlefield and the ruffians of the pugilistic society. It was totally unlike the aura of the scholar. When choosing his weapons at Sky Treasure Pavilion, Su Zimo did not choose the sword but the saber automatically. He did not know the reason behind his actions as well. Su Zimo finally understood why when he left the mansion of the city lord. That was because he was no scholar deep down inside. He was the son of the mighty Lord Wooding, that all the dukes were in awe of. He should be galloping on the battlefield, killing countless enemies with his fearless and indomitable spirit, blood staining his robe. Originally, Su Zimo could not understand why he was not the least nervous, scared or frightened when the knife that he held pierced Zhou Dingyun's throat that night. Instead, he was slightly excited and eager to try. Su Zimo finally understood everything right now. It was in his blood to kill without the slightest hesitation. Although he had spent more than 10 years studying, he could not hide his true nature. The words that Luo Tianwu said were like sharp thorns that pierced Su Zimo's heart. He was in agony at hearing them. His older brother was seriously injured. How was he doing? Was he in a critical state? Was Xiaoning frightened out of her wits at the calamity that befell the Su family? Upon passing by the inn that he stayed temporarily last time, Su Zimo chanced upon the unique mark made by Sky Treasure Pavilion. Could it be that the two pseudo-spirit weapons have been refined? Su Zimo hesitated slightly before heading to Sky Treasure Pavilion. When he reached the end of the alley, the wall sensed his Sky Treasure gold badge. It turned transparent as water instantly, and Su Zimo walked right through it. Upon reaching Sky Treasure Pavilion, Su Zimo did not stop but continued to go upstairs. There were many Qi refinement warriors at the main hall. Many of them turned to look at Su Zimo with a searing and examining gaze. The atmosphere in the main hall was strange. There was a detection skill in the cultivation world. Therefore, all the Qi refinement warriors present could tell that there was no spirit Qi within Su Zimo, yet he was able to reach the second level of Sky Treasure Pavilion. There was only one explanation for that: Su Zimo had Sky Treasure Badge with him. With the Sky Treasure Badge, one could be given a 10% discount when making purchases in Sky Treasure Pavilion. This was very tempting. When Su Zimo went to Sky Treasure Pavilion for the first time, he had Yao Xue, a Foundation establishment cultivator, with him. Therefore, nobody dared to have any designs on it. But now that it was Su Zimo who had the Sky Treasure Badge, it was tantamount to a 3-year-old kid who walked around with a gold brick. He was immortal, yet he had the Sky Treasure Badge. He must have come from an illustrious family. Although many of the Qi refinement warriors were tempted, they gave up the idea of snatching the Sky Treasure Badge, as they did not want to court death. However, there were still exceptions. A man's wealth was his own ruin by causing another's greed. There would always be someone who was willing to take the risk in the face of great temptation. A pair of cold eyes trailed after Su Zimo from the corner of the main hall. It followed him all the way to the end of the staircase. Su Zimo had something on his mind, therefore he did not notice the fleeting malicious gaze at the main hall. As soon as Su Zimo reached the second floor, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion stood up to welcome him with a big smile on his face. Young Master Su is finally here. The two pseudo-spirit weapons have been refined. Come and have a look. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion slapped on his storage bag, and one long saber and a longbow floated right in front of Su Zimo. There were 12 sharp arrows as well. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said, "The Cold Moon Saber is about 3 feet long, it has a silver blade, and a thick and sharp razor edge, suitable for slashing and killing. It is mainly made up of rare spiritual items. We have added 10 types of hard materials including 7 stars gravel and golden light rocks to cast the saber in accordance with your requirements. Although it had no spirit pattern, it can withstand the impact made from middle-grade spirit weapons and it would still be good as ever." Su Zimo nodded, reaching toward the long saber that floated in the air. Just then, there was a look of mockery in the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion's eyes. He was waiting for Su Zimo to make a fool of himself. Su Zimo asked that the pseudo-spirit weapons to be as heavy as possible. The Cold Moon Saber weighed close to 500 kilograms. Given his level 9 weapon refinement cultivation realm, he could barely handle the spirit weapon with his spirit chi. It was impossible to kill the enemy with such a weapon. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion believed that the moment Su Zimo took the saber, it would crush his feet. However, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion was dumbstruck the next moment. Su Zimo took Cold Moon Saber easily in his hands. He even tried a few strokes with it. It was as light as a feather to him. He nodded and said, "The saber is pretty good. It is just that it is still quite light." The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion. What kind of monster is this man? He has no spirit chi, but he could handle the weapon that weighed 500 kilograms with his physical strength. The most annoying part is that he finds it too light. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion rolled his eyes. "This is Sanguine Crystal Bow. Take it." The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion could not be bothered to go into details. He was in no mood to explain to him. The Sanguine Crystal Bow was bloody red and there was a crystal clear luster to it. It was as if blood was flowing in the bow, exuding a strange aura. It weighed as heavy as the Cold Moon Saber. Su Zimo slanted the Sanguine Crystal Bow over his body, while he tied the quiver on his back, putting the 12 sharp arrows into the quiver. He tied the Cold Moon Saber at his waist. He was all ready. "By the way, young Master Su, we have found someone suitable regarding your hiring notice. However, the person is somewhat different from your requirements," the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion said. "Oh? He is Song Chi, a level 7 Chi refinement warrior. According to him, if you are willing to pay him with some spirit stones in advance, he could reach level 8 Chi condensation. Of course, if you don't agree, I can say no to his request." He did not know how long he had to wait before a level 8 Chi refinement warrior could take on the assignment. Su Hong was seriously injured, he had no idea of his condition. Now that the Su family had suffered such misfortunes, Su Zimo intended to rush back to Pingyang town immediately. He had no time to wait. "Tell him to come. I would like to meet him," Su Zimo said in a deep voice. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion brought someone with him in no time. He was a Chi refinement warrior in his 40s. He looked handsome and composed. "This is young Master Su. You can talk to him regarding your requests." The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion stood to the side after finishing the introductions. Upon seeing Su Zimo, Song Chi did not look down on him or flatter him. He cupped his fists and said, "Young Master Su." Su Zimo asked, "Are you in a hurry to use spirit stones?" "Yes. If I have sufficient spirit stones, I will be able to get through level 8 Chi condensation." Song Chi nodded. "How long will it take?" "Well, I can't say for sure. Nobody can tell you the exact timing to break through a realm." Song Chi was being very frank. Su Zimo had a good first impression of the man. He was silent before he asked, "Since you are lacking spirit stones, why don't you join a clan? I am a pseudo-spirit root. No major clans are willing to accept me. Even if they accept me, they will only treat me as a servant." Song Chi smiled bitterly. A pseudo-spirit root was the worst spirit root. It contained the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire and earth. It would absorb a mixture of spirit chi. It was impure and one's cultivation speed was very slow. There were also spirit roots that only contained one element, for example metal spirit root, wood spirit root and fire spirit root. It was akin to the legendary heaven spirit root. It could take in the purest spirit chi, and its cultivation speed was fast. If one did not encounter any mishaps, one would most likely become a golden core. Given that he was a pseudo-spirit root, Su Zimo knew that Song Chi must have been through a lot of suffering to be able to reach level 7 Chi condensation in his 40s. Let's go. Come with me to Pingyang Town. I will give you 1,000 spirit stones in advance, Su Zimo said. Ah! Song Qi exclaimed. He could not conceal his joy. Song Qi did not expect that Su Zimo would agree to his request. After all, he was not a level 8 Qi refinement warrior, and he requested his employer to pay him spirit stones in advance. He felt sorry about it. He did not expect that Su Zimo would give him 1,000 spirit stones right away. Young Master Su, thank you very much. I will do everything possible to protect the Su family. Song Qi thanked him profusely. Chapter 28, You would not be able to leave today. Chapter 28, You would not be able to leave today. Upon exiting Sky Treasure Pavilion, Song Qi took out a flying sword from his storage bag. He touched it lightly with his fingertips, infusing it with spirit qi, and the flying sword floated in front of the two of them. Song Qi could tell that Su Zimo had no spirit qi. Since he had a bow and saber with him, he must know martial arts. It should not be a problem to get onto the flying sword. Song Qi said, Young Master Su, get on the flying sword. Don't be afraid. I will protect you while on the sword. I won't let you fall down from the sword. We will reach Pingyang Town in no time. Su Zimo's eyes swept over Song Qi's flying sword, shaking his head. Let's walk, we will see how it goes when we exit the city. There was no spirit pattern on Song Qi's flying sword. It was a pseudo-spirit weapon. Su Zimo himself, with the Sanguine crystal bow and cold moon saber, would weigh an entire ton. Given Song Qi's level 7 Qi condensation realm, he would not be able to carry all of them. Su Zimo did not point out the truth. They walked out of the city with long strides. There were not as many pedestrians outside the city. Su Zimo was about to execute Plow Heaven Stride to get to Pingyang Town when he noticed something. Someone is following us? Su Zimo did not turn back to check, but he could sense it. Su Zimo did not say anything but maintained his usual speed, walking toward Pingyang Town. Song Qi frowned, not saying anything. In no time, there was the sound of clothes flapping in the wind. The person was moving at a very fast speed. Cultivator? Song Qi was alarmed. He placed his hands on the storage bag as he turned to check. Not far away was a cultivator dressed in a black Taoist robe. He was speeding forward on his flying sword. There was a murderous look in his eyes. Obviously he had evil intentions. Level 8 Qi condensation. Song Qi let out a low shout, before he pulled Su Zimo to a side. He prayed fervently that the person was only passing by. In the blink of an eye, the black-robed Qi refinement warrior stopped in front of them. He leaped down from his flying sword, smiling coldly at Song Qi. Comrade, you had better step aside. Don't be a busybody. I have an enmity with this man. Song Qi glanced at Su Zimo, noticing that he had no expression on his face. Perhaps he was in a state of shock or that he did not know that there was danger. Song Qi cupped his fists. Comrade, you must be joking. My friend is a mere mortal. Why would you have any enmity with him? Buzz. The black-robed Qi refinement warrior touched his flying sword lightly. A beam of light shone from the flying sword. The sword's aura intensified. Inferior grade spirit weapon. Song Qi had sweaty palms. The other party's cultivation realm was one level higher than him and he had an inferior grade spirit weapon. If they engaged in fights, he had no chance of winning. Since you are dense, don't blame me for being ruthless. The black-robed Qi refinement warrior said coldly. Young Master Su, you should run for your life. Song Qi hurried to whisper to Su Zimo before he slapped his storage bag and a flying sword landed on his hand. Gee! Song Qi controlled the flying sword, making the first move so that he could take the other party by surprise. The flying sword turned into beams of lights, speeding toward the black-robed Qi refinement warrior. They reached him in no time. It was merely a pseudo-spirit weapon. How dare you act arrogant in front of me? The black-robed Qi refinement warrior sneered before he took his time to tap his sword, sending it flying forward, colliding with Song Qi's flying sword. Sparks were flying everywhere as the swords clashed into each other. Song Qi's flying sword was not as powerful. It almost flew off from the collision. The Qi refinement warrior's body was relatively weak. This posed a danger to them when in fights. If one was not careful, one might be injured by the other party's spirit weapon, and one would have no chance of surviving. Song Qi seemed to be on the losing end after sparring for a few rounds. He had no way to attack but could only defend himself. Fortunately, Song Qi was composed. He used all his energy to spar with the other party. His flying sword circled him, forming an impenetrable defense. Su Zimo nodded as he watched the scene from the side. Song Qi could have left under such circumstances. After all, he had gotten the 1,000 inferior-grade spirit stones. There was no need to put his life at risk for a mere mortal. Even though Song Qi knew that he could not defeat the other party, he did not leave by himself. It proved that he was a man of his words. Su Zimo could be reassured that Song Qi could be left in charge of protecting the Su family. Song Qi and the black-robed Qi refinement warrior was still in an intense battle. They were one level apart in terms of cultivation realm and their spirit weapons were of different grades as well. Song Qi's defenses gradually weakened in no time. The flying sword was not as steady as before. He had used up too much of his spirit Qi and he was weakened. Right then, Su Zimo asked, "Why do you want to kill me?" The black-robed Qi refinement warrior felt that he had the situation under control. He cast a sideways glance at Su Zimo, before saying in a pitiful tone, "I will tell you the reason so that you will know what caused your death. You are just a mortal yet you had the Sky Treasure badge. This is why you must die." Song Qi turned to check in the midst of the battle, realizing that Su Zimo was still standing on the same spot. He could not help but be anxious, shouting out to Su Zimo. "Why didn't you leave?" Swash! Song Qi was distracted and the other party made use of the chance to cut through his defense with his flying sword. The flying sword was right before him. It was chilling. Song Qi had no time to steer the direction of his flying sword. He panicked and could not be bothered with maintaining his dignity. He had no choice but to roll on the ground, barely escaping from death. He was muddy all over, looking like a terrible sight. Su Zimo smiled but did not say anything. Song Qi was helpless, saying through clenched teeth, "I am not his opponent. Young Master Su, you should leave as soon as possible, or it will be too late. No one will be able to leave today." The black-robed Qi refinement warrior hollered, and the flying sword sped up, hitting Song Qi's defense. Sound of metal clashing against one another could be heard. Right then, the two of them who were in a fierce fight heard a long sigh. "Yes, you would not be able to leave today." Both Song Qi and the black-robed Qi refinement warrior were shocked. Before they could figure out what Su Zimo meant by that, they saw a terrifying sight from the corner of their eyes. Su Zimo was standing 40 feet apart from them. But Su Zimo reached them within 2 to 3 strides. There was a murderous glint in his eyes. He was like a human-devouring beast that had the single intent of killing the person in front of him. Song Qi, who was by the side, felt a sense of fear, let alone the black-robed Qi refinement warrior who had been targeted by Su Zimo. "It's not good." The black-robed Qi refinement warrior's heart jumped a beat. He retreated while he maneuvered the flying sword, thinking of changing its direction to kill Su Zimo. However, the black-robed Qi refinement warrior was too slow, and in Su Zimo's eyes, he had too many weaknesses. Su Zimo had a cold glint in his eyes. He had a backhand grip on Cold Moon Saber, swinging it in front of him. There was a flash of light from the saber, it was blinding. Poof! A large head was hurled off and it was cut neatly at the neck area. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Song Qi opened his mouth slightly. He was confused. He stared at the scene, dumbstruck, unable to recover himself. Dead. A level 8 Qi refinement warrior was dead from one single slash of the saber. By luck? Down on his luck? Careless? Good saber. Su Zimo looked at the Cold Moon Saber. It did not have the slightest drop of blood on it. He praised the saber and put it back into its scabbard with a backhand motion. Song Qi could not help but swallow his saliva. What kind of man would be so calm after killing a level 8 Qi refinement warrior? In Song Qi's eyes, Su Zimo had turned out to be a mysterious man. He was a different person from the frail scholar that he knew previously. Song Qi could not help but think of the scene just now. The more he thought about it, the more terrifying it was. He broke out in cold sweats thinking of it. He realized to his horror, that if Su Zimo used the saber on him, he would have no way to dodge it. Su Zimo took the storage bag that was tied at the waist of the black-robed Qi refinement warrior. He did not take another look before he threw it to Song Qi. Take it. I cannot take it. For some unknown reason, Song Qi seemed to be nervous around Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled. Keep it and cultivate to level 8 Qi condensation as soon as possible. When Su Zimo smiled, he seemed to look like the frail scholar again. Song Qi relaxed slightly, no longer feeling as stressed, accepting the storage bag from him. Su Zimo continued, you can concentrate on maneuvering the flying sword to reach Pingyang town as soon as possible. Song Qi agreed and was about to ask where was Su Zimo going when he realized that he was no longer in the same position. He strode forward, covering 20 feet at one time. His speed was amazing. It was not until now that Song Qi realized that his employer was no simple man. Song Qi hurried to maneuver the sword to keep up with Su Zimo. Chapter 29, I would take revenge for the Su family. Chapter 29, I would take revenge for the Su family. Su Zimo and the other man arrived at Pingyang town one after another. Su Zimo did not want to attract attention, therefore he told Song Qi to put away his flying sword and to walk with him to Su family's residence. The door to the mansion was tightly shut. Su Zimo had good hearing. From the intermittent sobbing sounds coming from the mansion, he could tell that it was Su Xiaoning. Su Zimo frowned, striding forward, exerting strength in his arms and pushed the door open. The crossbar behind the door broke into pieces. Who's there? A dozen black-armored cavalrymen dashed to the front door right away. They were seeing red, looking ready to kill. They were stunned at the sight of Su Zimo. Second young master? Su Zimo nodded, bringing Song Qi toward the direction where the crying sounds came from. Song Qi swept his gaze over the guards, slightly fearful of them. He could sense the murderous aura of the guards. They had obviously been through a lot on the battlefields to have such a fearsome aura. They were no ordinary pugilistic experts. Many people from the Su family were gathered outside Su Hong's room. Some of them were standing while some were sitting. Everyone looked solemn and crestfallen. Sorrow and misery hung in the air. Second young master is back, Uncle Zheng stood up and said. Su Zimo squinted his eyes as he asked, how is brother now? There was a look of worry on Uncle Zheng's face. He shook his head. Wait for a while. Young master is still unconscious. Su Zimo swept his gaze over everyone in the Su family, saying in a low voice, do you still intend to keep it from me now that things had come to this stage? Everyone in the Su family looked at each other, giving out a long sigh. My father used to be Su Mu, Lord Wooding of the country of Yen. Is that right? Su Zimo said softly. Everyone in the Su family looked alarmed. Uncle Zheng was shocked. Second young master, you. Luo Tianwu came to look for me. Upon hearing his words, Uncle Zheng suddenly saw the light. He sighed before saying, Luo Tianwu is no good man. He has rapacious designs. He dreams of being the king in troubled times. He sought young master, wanting to collaborate with him, but was refused. The Su family and King of Yen may be enemies, but young master does not want to implicate the people in the country of Yen. Your father had been on the battlefield all his life. His troops, the black armored cavalry, were famed for guarding the frontier, resisting the external enemies. The country of Yen did not lose a single piece of land in the battles. The general made a vow that he would protect the people of the country of Yen all his life, so that they would have a place to live, and be spared from the pains of wars. Young master would continue his father's mission, therefore he refused to join hands with Luo Tianwu. Speaking of this, Uncle Zheng had no wish to keep things from Su Zimo anymore. He continued to say, over the years, young master would always be on the road. He was in fact gathering the former black armored cavalry under the pretense of selling horses. He was training them while waiting for the opportunity to take revenge. How many people are there now? 5,000. Where can so many people hide? How can they hide from the spies of the countries of Yen and Qi? Su Zimo frowned. Uncle Zheng replied. They have been hiding at a ghostly village near the country of Yen. A few decades ago, the entire village was devoured and wiped out by packs of wolves, even fowls and dogs were not spared. There was not a soul to be seen. No one dared to live at the village. In the end, it turned out to be the best cover for them. Su Zimo thought before asking. Uncle Zheng used to hint that the enemies of the Su family are Qi refinement warriors. What do you mean by that? A few decades ago, there were many Qi refinement warriors in the capital city of the country of Yen. They guarded the King of Yen, and therefore we had to keep postponing the plan of assassinating King of Yen. Young master waited patiently for a chance when the spies in the palace sent news a month ago that King of Yen was going hunting at the southern suburb. The black armored cavalry would only be most powerful in wide terrain. The Qi refinement warriors would die if they make the slightest mistake when sparring with them. Su Zimo nodded. Qi refinement warriors had weak bodies. They were no different from normal mortals. If armies went into battles, and there was a storm of arrows, a few Qi refinement warriors would not be able to change the outcome. They might even die. Uncle Zheng shook his head and let out a long sigh. Unfortunately, the assassination this time failed. There were not a few but dozens of Qi refinement warriors beside the King of Yen. There was even a cultivation clan as the King of Yan's support. Su Zimo was shocked to hear this. In the cultivation world, the clan leader had to at least reach the foundation establishment realm before he could establish a clan. Uncle Zheng continued. Young master was worried that they would attract attention, therefore, he only brought over thousands of black armored cavalry with him, and they went into the city in small groups. But they were besieged by dozens of Qi refinement warriors at the southern suburbs. They suffered heavy losses and young master was heavily wounded, while only a few dozen black armored cavalry survived out of the thousands of them. Song Qi came forward and whispered. Second young master Su, I have an essence nourishing pill. It is very common in the cultivation world. It can be used to stabilize the foundation and nourishing the essence. It should be useful to young master. Thanks. Su Zimo nodded. Uncle Zheng said in disappointment, it's easy to heal the body, but it's difficult to heal the heart. The failure this time was too big a blow to young master. Su Zimo frowned. Brother has strong willpower and determination. Why would he be defeated after one failure? Uncle Zheng smiled forlornly and sighed. Young master knew that if there is a cultivation clan to support King of Yen, there will be no way for the Su family to take revenge. There is no grief so great as despair. I guess, there is no way to change things. Young master is awake. Right then Lu Yu walked out of the room with a grave expression on his face. There was a strong pungent smell of medicine upon reaching the door. Su Zimo turned and looked toward the bed. His brother, Su Hong, lay silently on the bed. His injuries were serious and his breathing was getting weaker. Brother! Su Xiaoning, who stayed vigil beside the bed, cried out loud, running into Su Zimo's embrace, bursting into tears. Older brother is seriously injured. Second brother, can you think of a solution? Su Zimo patted Su Xiaoning gently on the back, comforting her with soft whispers. He helped her to the side before he went to check on Su Hong. Su Hong's hair had turned white. He had just reached 30 years old, but he seemed aged. His face was gaunt and yellow and his lips were cracked. He stared blankly at the roof, as if he had lost his soul. His hair turned white overnight. Indeed, there was no grief so great as despair. Su Zimo's heart ached at the sight of his older brother. There were tears in his eyes. The Su family had been ensnared in a blood feud for years and his brother had to seek justice for the family by himself. For the past 16 years, this man protected his younger brother and sister from harm, for fear that they would suffer any slightest grievances or be hurt. He remained tight-lipped, worried that they would be embroiled in it. This man bore the hatred and feud by himself for 16 years. He could not imagine the kind of life that he led over the years. Had he ever be able to have a good night's sleep in the past 16 years? How painful and torturous it must be for this man to be living in hatred all the time for 16 years. Brother! Su Zimo's lips quivered as he called for his brother. There was never a moment ere this word sounded so depressing as when Su Zimo spoke of it. Su Hong turned his head slowly, resting his blank gaze on Su Zimo's face for a long while before there was finally some sparkle in his eyes. He moved his stiff lips, forcing a smile on his lips, as he spoke softly, "Zimo, you are back." Su Zimo knelt down on the floor, holding Su Hong's cold hands in his palms. He squeezed his lips tightly together, fighting back the tears in his eyes. "Zimo, I won't be able to make it." Su Hong sighed softly. Su Zimo lost control at his words. Tears trailed down his cheeks, wetting his sleeves. This was the first time that Su Zimo cried in the past 18 years. Su Hong tried to lift his arm to wipe the tears on Su Zimo's face. But his arm was too weak and it fell back onto the bed in midway. "Don't shed tears, don't shed tears." The men in the Su family only shed blood but not tears. Su Zimo lifted his sleeves to wipe his tears, nodding. "Zimo, after I die, leave with Xiaoning and the Su family. Go to a place as far away as possible," Su Hong said. Su Zimo lowered his head, keeping silent. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his skin, blood oozing out of it. Su Zimo raised his head after a long while, looking calm. "Brother, have a good rest. Don't think too much." There was something else that Su Zimo kept to himself. He would take revenge for the Su family. Chapter 30, An Eye for an Eye. Chapter 30, An Eye for an Eye. Su Zimo left the room. Uncle Zheng noticed that Su Zimo looked odd. He hurried to chase after him, saying in a low voice, "Second young master, don't be foolish to attempt another assassination on the King of Yen. The Su family could leave for a faraway place. The world is huge, we will have a place to go. Uncle Zheng, you have been worrying too much. I am not thinking of assassinating the King of Yen." Su Zimo shook his head. He did not seem like he was lying. Uncle Zheng nodded, not totally believing him. "I intend to move to the ghostly village to stay low for the time being. There are after all still 5,000 black armored cavalry over there. It will be safer. Second young master, you should come with us. I have some matters to attend to. I will go to the ghostly village to look for you later. Su Zimo changed the topic, pointing to Song Qi at the side. This is Mr. Song Qi. He is here to protect the Su family. If there's anything, you can discuss with him. Uncle Zheng did not think too much into it. He thought that Song Qi was a friend from the pugilistic society that Su Zimo knew. Su Zimo turned to leave. He had reached the door of the mansion when Song Qi caught up with him. Young Master Su, are you thinking of going to the city where the King of Yen lives? Song Qi could vaguely sense the murderous intent of Su Zimo, therefore he asked of his intention. Su Zimo kept on walking and he remained silent. Song Qi caught up with him again, saying in a deep voice, Young Master Su, I know that you have the ability to kill Qi refinement warriors and you are very powerful in close proximity fights. However, that is only for one-to-one fight. You will not be able to reach the Qi refinement warriors when you are surrounded by the huge army. You won't have any chance. Even if you manage to kill King of Yen, will you be able to escape from the closely guarded city where the King of Yen lives in? There are the city army, the elite imperial army, the siege crossbows and various killing devices, as well as the attack by the Qi refinement warriors. There is no way for perfected Qi refinement warriors to assassinate the king of a country, let alone you. There is no chance of survival. All right. Su Zimo turned abruptly, his face gloomy. Song Qi was startled. Su Zimo was expressionless. Your mission is to protect the Su family. Don't worry about me. But Song Qi was about to persuade him further but Su Zimo waved his hands to stop him. I will leave my brother in your hands. I hope that you will be able to nurse him back to health. As for his concern deep down inside of him, leave it to me. I will resolve it for him. With that, Su Zimo executed Plow Heaven Stride and disappeared out of sight in the blink of an eye. There was only a single way to resolve Su Hong's concern, and it was King of Yan's head. Su Zimo hurried along the streets in Pingyang town. There was nothing but coldness in his eyes. He could feel a burning rage inside of him. It was flaming. He could only douse the flames with the fresh blood of his enemy. Su Zimo reached his mansion in no time. He pushed the door open and walked straight to the cultivation field. Dai Yu was still lazing around on the green stone in the cultivation field. She had an indifferent expression on her face as she cast a glance at Su Zimo. It had been a year since he last saw Dai Yu. Nothing seemed to have changed about her. She still looked very beautiful. It was as if she had not aged at all in the past 1 year. Su Zimo had thought of all kinds of scenes where he met up with Dai Yu after 1 year. But he had not expected that it would be like this. I am leaving, Su Zimo lowered his head, speaking softly. He dared not look at Dai Yu. Oh. Dai Yu raised her eyebrows slightly. Now that I leave this time, I might not be able to come back. Courting death? Sort of. Since Su Zimo wanted to enter the capital and kill the king of the country, he had to face not a man, but an entire country, as well as the multiple Qi refinement warriors and a cultivation clan. It was the cultivation clan that had foundation establishment cultivators with them. Su Zimo did not dream of coming back alive from his trip to the country of Yen. This might be the last farewell for the two of them. Dai Yu looked at Su Zimo, there was a tenderness in her eyes. Even though you know you are courting death, you are going to go anyway. Su Zimo remained silent. Dai Yu continued. Actually, you have other better options. You can choose to take it lying down and continue to cultivate until you are strong enough. Scenes seemed to flash in Su Zimo's mind. It was as if it was 16 years ago. He saw how his parents died a terrible death under the Saber. He saw how the Su family was massacred, and the river turned into blood, the corpses piled into a mountain. He saw how his older brother protected he and Xiaoning, and escaped from the city. He suffered a slash at his face and it went unnoticed even though it was covered with blood. In the end, Su Zimo's gaze rested on his brother's white hair, his gaunt and yellow face, and his blank eyes. "Why do I cultivate?" Su Zimo blurted out all of a sudden, as if asking Daiyu, but he seemed to be muttering to himself as well. "I cultivate not to take things lying down. If I want to do so, I would have knelt down at perfected Song Lang's bullying behavior 1 year ago. If I wanted to do so, I would have pleaded for mercy when Zhou Dingyun came to take my life." The next moment, Su Zimo suddenly looked up. He could feel the blood surging in his body, his eyes bloody red. He shouted. "Since I feel unjust, I will make sure to seek justice. So what if he is the king of a country? So what if he has a cultivation clan to support him? I will kill to my heart's content. It is better to do things on a grand and spectacular scale this moment than to take things lying down for the entire life. I cultivate so as to go all out to exact revenge. I cultivate as I believe in an eye for an eye." "Good." Daiyu nodded. In the 1.5 years of cultivation, Daiyu had never praised him. This was the first time that he heard this word coming from Daiyu. "Remember what you said today. It concerns your future and achievements." Daiyu made another remark which Su Zimo could not understand. There was a demonic glitter in Daiyu's eyes. Thereafter, there were several sutras in Su Zimo's mind. This is the bone-strengthening sutra. It is taken from the divine steed Demon King. The divine steed was headstrong. It had the fastest gallop, it was forceful and resilient, there was a strong momentum and explosive power in its gallop. I will impart another 3 styles to you. Divine Steed Dismemberment, Divine Steed Trampling and Divine Steed Fleeting. You can try to figure it out along the way. If you are able to comprehend it, you might be able to be on par with level 10 perfected Qi refinement warriors. Daiyu leaped down from the green stone and began to show him the moves. Su Zimo did not blink at all. He was focused on learning the 3 styles. He knew that this could be his last hope at killing the king of Yen and returning alive. Daiyu was done with the demonstration of the 3 styles in no time. She looked toward Su Zimo as she said, "Go along." One word of reminder. Demon cultivators are best at skipping the levels and killing the opponents. Given your capabilities now, although you are not as good as Foundation Establishment cultivators, if you are able to be in their close proximity, you will still be able to kill them instantly. Su Zimo nodded. Foundation Establishment cultivators would release an explosive energy when they maneuvered flying swords. It was far better and much more flexible than Qi refinement warriors. They might have other attack and defensive moves that were sufficient to kill Su Zimo. But this did not mean that Foundation Establishment cultivators had no weaknesses. Although they had stronger bodies than Qi refinement warriors, their physical strength was still no match for Su Zimo. If Su Zimo had the opportunity to get close to them, he would still be able to kill them on the spot. It sounded simple, but it was in fact as difficult as reaching the sky. Su Zimo looked at Daiyu, no longer hiding his reluctance to part with her. He smiled lightly and said, "Miss Dai, goodbye." Daiyu turned with her back facing him as she waved to him. Su Zimo took a deep breath and walked out of the cultivation field, looking toward the capital city of the country of Yen that was far in the distance. He clenched his fists as he said softly, "King of Yen, wash your neck clean. I am coming." Chapter 31, At Close Combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. Chapter 31, At Close Combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. Su Zimo headed north from Pingyang town, crossing Tsanglang mountain range and entered the territory of the country of Yen. Su Zimo did not ride a horse along the way. Given his full speed right now, no horse was powerful enough to be able to catch up to him. The weather had turned cold, and early winter had arrived. But Su Zimo was burning hot, white clouds of vapor rising from the top of his head. While Su Zimo hurried along the way, he was applying the bone-strengthening sutra. His legs alternated in an amazing speed. Not even a shadow of his could be seen. Divine Steed Fleeting. This style in the bone-strengthening section was known for its speed. Plow Heaven Stride was used to train the strength in the legs, and every stride came with tremendous force. On the other hand, Divine Steed Fleeting was all about speed. Through mastering the foundation of body tempering section and tendons transformation section, and by working one's muscles and shaking one's tendons, the bones were strengthened through constant beating and hitting. If one achieved initial success in the bone strengthening section, once the person exerted strength, there would be cracking crisp sounds of the bones. When the person achieved phenomenal success, all the tendons and bones would give out loud sounds. After cultivating the bone strengthening section, one's physical strength would be significantly increased. By using the Divine Steed style, one could travel 500 kilometers a day, and 400 kilometers a night. No other demon could match up to this kind of superb stamina. To travel from Pingyang town to the country of Yen, a level 10 perfected Qi refinement warrior would need about 10 days while traveling day and night without rest. After mastering Divine Steed Fleeting, Su Zimo was able to reach the country of Yen on the 8th day. Along the way, Su Zimo walked at full speed, as swift as the wind, constantly using the breathing and expiration method of bone strengthening section, never stopping for 1 second. This was all thanks to the scarlet flame fruit that sealed the huge source of essence in his body. This was why Su Zimo was able to keep cultivating. Su Zimo carried the Sanguine crystal bow on his back and the cold moon saber around his waist, and was travel-worn when he arrived at the capital city of the country of Yen. He had yet to enter the city, but he could tell that the city was tightly guarded. There were dozens of armored guards standing on the 2 sides of the city gate, checking the pedestrians one by one. Su Zimo carried a casual expression and walked up to the city gate. One of the guards stopped Su Zimo, sizing him up. There was mockery in his eyes, as he smiled softly. "You are just a poor scholar, why did you carry a bow and saber with you? Bluffing people?" Su Zimo was clad in his usual green robe. He had a fair complexion and delicate features. He did not seem like someone who practiced martial arts. That was why the guards found it odd that a scholar carried a bow and saber with him. Su Zimo remained composed, carrying a smile, not making any comments. "Hey, that poor guy, take the saber at your waist and let me take a look. Has it been edged?" "Huh." Another city guard who was further away joined in the fun as well. There was a change in Su Zimo's countenance as he slowly reached his hands toward Cold Moon Saber. Su Zimo had no wish to start a fight at the city gate. Once he started the killing spree here, all the city guards would come at him. Qi refinement warriors might even be here as well. Even if Su Zimo managed to survive and go all the way to the palace, the king of Yen would have gone into hiding. Just when Su Zimo's hand rested on the hilt of Cold Moon Saber, the commander of the guards who stood by the side saw the scene and laughed while he lamented his troops. "Damn, you guys only know how to bully a scholar. Hey, scholar, you can ignore them and enter the city." Su Zimo relaxed slightly and nodded toward the man, before he entered the city. Su Zimo located Sky Treasure Pavilion and went to the 2nd level. He intended to deposit Sanguine Crystal Bow and Cold Moon Saber at this place for the time being. These 2 weapons were too eye-catching. It was impossible for him to bring them into the palace. With the Sky Treasure Badge, Su Zimo was able to deposit items for free. The manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion at the country of Yen gave a soft sigh when Su Zimo took out his Sky Treasure Badge. He smiled as he asked, "Young master, can I take a look at your badge?" Su Zimo handed his Sky Treasure Gold Badge over. There was an odd look on the manager's face when he looked at the badge. "Why, is anything wrong? Su Zimo frowned. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion immediately shook his head, smiling as brightly as before, handing the Sky Treasure gold badge back. There's no problem. When do you intend to retrieve the items? If everything goes as planned, it will be tomorrow. With that, Su Zimo turned to leave Sky Treasure Pavilion. After Su Zimo left, the smile on the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion vanished and he looked grim. Manager, is the Sky Treasure gold badge fake? The person is no Chi refinement warrior, yet he has a Sky Treasure gold badge. He is indeed suspicious, one of the workers at Sky Treasure Pavilion asked. It's not fake. It is 100% real. The manager shook his head, frowning, deep in his thoughts. The morning of the next day, the ministers gathered outside the palace, ready to go to the royal court to see the King of Yen. Su Zimo was among one of them. After achieving initial success at Tendon's transformation, Su Zimo was able to shrink and move the muscles on his face, making changes to his facial appearance. But he was unable to change his body shape. If he reached phenomenal success at Tendon's transformation, he would be able to have a complete transformation, changing his body shape. If he could achieve phenomenal success at bone strengthening, he would even be able to shrink and expand his bones, changing his height to become a totally different person. Last night, Su Zimo knocked a civil official named Sheng Guanyu unconscious, and took his place to attend the morning session today. Brother Shengguan, I have not seen you for a few days and you seem to have grown taller. One man next to him came over to chat with him. Su Zimo remained silent, not reacting to his words. One was bound to have a slip of the tongue if he talked too much. Moreover, Su Zimo might have changed his facial appearance, but he was unable to have the same voice as Sheng Guanyu. Seeing that Su Zimo did not reply to him, the person turned around in embarrassment after inviting a snub. He no longer chatted with Su Zimo. Clang! 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 The bell tower rang. All the civil and martial officials tidied their appearance and walked in 2 rows toward the palace. An old man in his 50s to 60s, with a crown on his head and in a dragon robe sat in the center of the palace, perched high up. His gaze was fiery, looking majestic and awe-inspiring from sitting on the throne for many years. This was the King of Yen. There were 4 Chi refinement warriors in Taoist robes on the 2 sides of the King of Yen. They looked relaxed, as if they were taking a short rest. The civil and martial officials entered the palace, kneeled before the king and shouted in a loud voice, "All hail the king!" This sound echoed in the palace, it was loud and forceful. He, Zhao Qian. While the officials were greeting the king, someone sneered among the crowd. It was particularly jarring. Zhao Qian was the name of the King of Yen. Who dared to call the king by their name in front of the king himself? All the officials were alarmed, looking toward the sound. A man was seen walking out from the crowd. He took off his official's robe, revealing a green robe inside. Sheng Guanyu, you must be crazy. How dare you offend the king? One of the martial officials snarled, but he noticed that the facial appearance of the green-robed man was undergoing odd changes. He turned into another person in the blink of an eye. All the officials thought that they were seeing things. They rubbed their eyes and widened their eyes to take a closer look. He was not Sheng Guanyu. The 4 Chi refinement warriors who sat next to the King of Yen frowned, sweeping their gaze over Su Zimo. They sneered when they discovered that the man had no spirit chi. To them, changing facial appearances was merely a small trick. The King of Yen remained composed all along. His gaze was swift and fierce. He stared at Su Zimo, speaking in a cold voice. Who are you? Don't you recognize me? Su Zimo smiled and asked, do you still remember Su Mu? Pust. There was a commotion within the officials. This name was a taboo in the country of Yen. No one dared to speak of it in front of the King of Yen. The king of Yen squinted his eyes and took a closer look at Su Zimo. The king of Yen raised his head and laughed after a long while. Ha ha ha, are you his son? Yes. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. Su Hong is my older brother. Oh. The king of Yen raised his eyebrows and ridiculed him. What is your intention by coming to my palace? Su Zimo said softly, I am here to kill you. Hee hee. Ha. All the officials broke out into laughter. To them, Su Zimo, the frail scholar, was like an idiot who spoke conceited nonsense. Poof. The king of Yen could not help but laugh as he nodded. This is interesting, very interesting. Su Zimo once told Uncle Zheng that he never thought of assassinating the king of Yen. He was telling the truth. Regardless of whether it was covert killing or assassination, to Su Zimo, it was not enough to appease his rage and the injustice done to his family. That would be letting the king of Yen off too easily. Su Zimo had to kill the king of Yen, and he would do it openly, in front of all the officials. Su Zimo wanted the king of Yen and the entire world to know that it was Su Mu's descendants who killed the king of Yen. It was only through this way could he feel the slightest pleasure and appease his anger and hatred. The king of Yen shook his head, feeling slightly emotional. I didn't expect that the two sons of Su Mu would be vastly different. Su Hong endured it for 16 years and planned the assassination for years. He only dared to lay an ambush and to assassinate me. How dare you have the impudence to come to my palace and threaten to kill me? How dare you, and on what basis? The king of Yen sneered. To me, Su Hong is considered as somewhat capable. And you? Hee hee, you are merely an ignorant man who is brave, but lacks wisdom and tact. Ignorant man? Su Zimo smiled, raising his head as he asked, Zhao Qian, have you heard of this saying? Once the ignorant man was enraged, he would cause bloodshed within 5 steps. At close combat, a man could be even more powerful than the combined strength of an entire country. With that, there was a bright glitter in Su Zimo's eyes. He exuded a piercing cold and murderous aura. The temperature of the main hall seemed to drop suddenly. Chapter 32, Slay the King. Chapter 32, Slay the King. Not good. The Qi refinement warriors sitting by both sides of the king of Yen stood up suddenly. Their countenances changed greatly. It was extremely dangerous. Suddenly, this seemingly weak and frail scholar had changed into a different person. The aura that he emanated made the 4 Qi refinement warriors terror-stricken. Such was already the case for the Qi refinement warriors, much less the rest of the people in the main hall. Some of the civil officials were so frightened that they dropped to the ground, paralyzed and numb. Bang! Both Su Zimo's feet landed on the floor and gave out a deafening thud. The floor laid with gold bricks split on impact, causing a long and huge crack to appear on it. Below the cracks was like a dark and spooky hell that emitted a cold and sinister aura. The entire palace was shaking violently. Dust fell. The sky and ground were seemingly on the brink of collapse, and the atmosphere was absolutely terrifying. If one did not see it with his own eyes, no one dared to believe that the scene before them was caused by one individual. Su Zimo had already disappeared from the earlier spot. His figure dashed ahead like a divine and savage steed. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the king of Yen. Fast. It was too fast. The earlier spot that Su Zimo stood was at least 10 feet away from the king of Yen. However, everyone only felt their eyes blur for a moment before Su Zimo appeared just 1 elbow away from the king of Yen. At this moment, the 4 Qi refinement warriors beside the king of Yen had just searched out their spirit weapons from their storage bags. The reaction time of the two sides were on completely different levels. It was not until this moment that everyone in the main hall finally understood Su Zimo's earlier words. Although he was 10 feet away from the king of Yen, To Su Zimo, that was only considered an elbow's length. At such a close range, one would not be able to beat an ordinary man even when he had the aid of the entire country. Why you? What are you doing? The king of Yen was so frightened that his liver and gall were almost splitting. Scared out of his wits, his eyes were filled with horror and he backed off instinctively. Su Zimo's expression was chilling and cold. He conveniently hurled off the crown on the king of Yan's head. The latter's hair fell all over his face, making him look unkempt and embarrassed. Su Zimo stepped forward, reached out his palm, grabbed the king of Yan's hair and lifted him up. Ah! The king of Yen screamed when he felt the severe pain coming from his scalp. Beads of sweat could be seen on his forehead and his limbs turned cold. Mortal, how dare you? Release the king of Yen quickly. Otherwise, you will face death for sure. 2 of the 4 Qi refinement warriors were controlling flying swords. Another one was directing a long saber. The remaining one was controlling a roulette with sharp edges. Out of the 4 spirit weapons, only the roulette had a spirit pattern and was an inferior-grade spirit weapon. The other 3 weapons suspended in the air were pseudo-spirit weapons. They were aimed at the vital points on Su Zimo's body and were waiting for an opportune time to strike. Su Zimo did not seem bothered. He dragged the king of Yan's hair and took a few steps back. He used his backhand grip to pick up the long saber that was placed horizontally on the rack behind him. Clang! Sounds of sharp blades unsheathing resonated across the main hall. The lingering sounds were so creepy that it sent chills up one's spine. Su Zimo placed the long saber on the king of Yan's neck horizontally. The king of Yen could feel the coldness from the sharp blade. Shortly after, he was having goosebumps all over. My name is Su Zimo. Remember me. Su Zimo's voice rang in his ears. There was not the slightest change in Su Zimo's emotions. Yet, the king of Yen felt very nervous. Su Zimo, do you know that the Imperial Army and Royal Guards total over 150,000 people? Coupled with the Immortal Cultivation clan behind me, you won't be able to escape even if you can fly. The king of Yen was the ruler of a country after all. When his life was at stake, he tried his best to regain his composure, forcefully suppressed his fears and said while gritting his teeth, "Why don't I make a deal with you?" Hee hee. Su Zimo laughed. At the sound of this laughter, the king of Yan's heart gradually sank to the bottom of the valley. He could sense that Su Zimo was hell-bent on killing him. Swoosh! At this very moment, the king of Yen could hear the sounds of weapons moving in the air at lightning speed. The Qi refinement warrior is taking action. The king of Yen rejoiced in his heart. As long as the Qi refinement warrior could kill Su Zimo with one slash of the sword, he would still have a chance to live. The Qi refinement warrior who made the move was standing behind Su Zimo. The distance between the two was too close. He was less than 10 feet away. The flying sword stabbed towards the blind spot of Su Zimo's sight. It approached the back of Su Zimo's brains like a flash of light at that instant. The eyes of the other 3 Qi refinement warriors lit up. It looked like the flying sword was going to stab the back of Su Zimo's brains. As if eyes were grown on his back and without turning his head, Su Zimo suddenly swung his arms behind his head and rapped that flying sword gently, seemingly not using much strength. The expression of the attacking Qi refinement warrior changed. He discovered that he had actually lost control of the flying sword. The Qi refinement warrior had wound his own spirit Qi around the flying sword to control the weapon. He could direct the sword with his hands for the purpose of attacking or defending. However, how powerful was the bovine-tongued saber? Under the wrapping, the spirit Qi of the flying sword dissipated instantly. Su Zimo flipped his hand and threw the sword away. Poof! The flying sword pierced through the chest of the Qi refinement warrior and drew out a streak of blood. Unhindered, it pierced into the wall of the main hall ruthlessly, the blade trembling non-stop. The entire process seemed slow when narrated, but it occurred very quickly. From the moment that the Qi refinement warrior took action to the point where the sword pierced through his body, it took less than the moment of a breath. This man's expression was dazed, his eyes filled with disbelief and losing focus as he landed on the floor with a loud thud. Pust. The remaining 3 Qi refinement warriors gasped and took a few steps back instinctively. They were trying to distance themselves from Su Zimo. If the earlier sword from Su Zimo was thrown towards any of them, none of them could have dodged it. The speed of that sword was completely beyond their response time. Hurry. Go and notify Senior Brother Lu for reinforcements. One of the 3 Qi refinement warriors looked terrified. He dashed towards the back of the main hall and disappeared in the blink of an eye. To the King of Yen, these few moments of breath seemed 100 years long. They had failed. Even the Qi refinement warriors failed when they took actions. All this while, the long saber on the neck of the King of Yen had never left him by an inch. Su Zimo lowered his head slightly and whispered into the ears of King of Yen, "Zhao Qian, do you know that, the moment that I stepped into the palace, you were already a dead man? If I say that I will kill you, no one can save you even when you search high and low for a savior." There was pin-drop silence in the wide and spacious main hall. Seemingly, everyone had been stunned by an individual's aura and kept mum out of fear. Su Zimo's voice was not loud. It was light and calm, as if he was chatting with the King of Yen. However, behind this voice, everyone could feel the murderous intent that made one's heart shudder. The King of Yen was shivering with fear all over. His teeth clattered loudly non-stop. "Zhao Qian, you don't need to be afraid. It is just one slash. There won't be any pain." Su Zimo's gaze was icy cold. He said word by word, "I will send you on the road to apologize to my parents." Poof! The large head of the King of Yen had been cut off by Su Zimo in one slash. He was holding it in his hands. Even upon his death, the King of Yan's eyes were popped out wide and filled with horror. In fact, before the slash, the King of Yen had already died of fear. He had been frightened till death when he was alive. Ta! 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 Successive footsteps could be heard coming from outside the palace. The imperial army of the Kingdom of Yen had already rushed here. Su Zimo tied the King of Yan's head on his waist and surveyed the surroundings. Shaking the long saber in his hands and exuding a murderous aura, he said coldly, "The King of Yen is already dead. Anyone who stops me shall not be spared." Chapter 33, The Powerful Repression. Chapter 33, The Powerful Repression. Just as Su Zimo beheaded the King of Yen, the hundreds of civil and military officials in the main hall panicked and were at a loss over what to do. Some fainted on the spot with their eyes rolled back, while some fled outside without even turning back. Among the crowd who fled, there was an excited gleam in the eyes of one of the martial officials despite his terrified expression. When this person ran to a corner outside the palace, an ordinary-looking soldier nearby immediately joined him. The person said in a low voice, "Quickly leave the palace and send a pigeon post to City Lord Luo. Tell him that the King of Yen is already dead and the important event can be realized." Order received. That soldier quickened his steps and left the palace. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared into the crowd. In the main hall, Su Zimo held the long saber with his right hand. With the King of Yan's head hung on his waist, he wanted to dash outside but he suddenly heard someone hollering behind him, "Who are you? How dare you come to the palace and behave so atrociously?" Su Zimo looked back. Both Su Zimo and that person who spoke were frozen for a moment. The person who spoke had a gaunt and thin face and he wore a wide and long robe. His left sleeves looked empty. He was a one-armed man. This person was none other than the level 8 Qi refinement warrior from Joyful Clan who escaped a narrow death when Su Zimo paralyzed one of his arms in Tsanglang mountain range. It's you? The one-armed Qi refinement warrior recognized Su Zimo at one glance. The fearsomeness in his eyes instantly turned into fear and panic. Although the condition of his wounds had already stabilized, he was often awakened by nightmares in recent nights. That wild man in Tsanglang mountain range was even more terrifying and savage than spirit beasts. He was like a recurring nightmare that would not go away. Su Zimo laughed. With a sinister stare, he said in a spooky manner, "So, you are the one. All of you, stop him. I'm going to send a message to the clan." The one-armed Qi refinement warrior could sense Su Zimo's murderous intent. He did not think of resisting at all. After shouting, he actually escaped to the direction where he came from atop his flying sword. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior was very clear of Su Zimo's weakness. If he wanted to escape from Su Zimo's clutches, he would have to use sword kinesis flight. The ceiling in the palace had a certain height and he was worried that he would not be able to leave Su Zimo's range of attack. As long as he escaped to the outside to the boundless sky and sea, he could then survive. Su Zimo slid his soles and dashed forward. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of one of the Qi refinement warriors. He supinated his hands and gave a punch. Bang! Just as this man drew out his spirit weapon, his head exploded on the impact of Su Zimo's punch and he died on the spot. After he was enlightened about divine steed fleeting, Su Zimo's speed increased further and he could close in with even more ease. Once Su Zimo closed in on the Qi refinement warrior, it meant that the latter's death was imminent. G. The only level 8 Qi refinement warrior in the main hall directed the inferior grade spirit weapon towards Su Zimo. There was a flash of radiance on the roulette spirit weapon. The spirit pattern shone, the power and speed of the spirit weapon increased greatly. Without even looking at it, Su Zimo supinated his hands and slashed with his long saber. Snap! The long saber broke and the roulette speed reduced greatly upon the huge and astonishing impact. Su Zimo stretched out his palm and placed it on the roulette gently. Rap and vibrate. The roulette had already fallen into his hands. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo had never paused. He bumped into the arms of another Qi refinement warrior, exerted all his strength and leaned towards him. Bang! This man was flung off instantly. In mid-air, his body suddenly exploded and disintegrated. Broken arms and legs were flying around and blood and flesh splattered all over. In a few moments, Su Zimo had broken away from the encirclement of the few Qi refinement warrior and dashed towards the one-armed Qi refinement warrior. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior was escaping very quickly. While he was flying on the sword, he was furiously penning down something. It was uncertain what he was writing. The moment the one-armed Qi refinement warrior escaped out of the palace, he threw the thing in his hands towards the sky. Su Zimo watched carefully. There was a lifelike, white paper crane the size of a palm in mid-air. It was shining with spirit light. After fluttering its wings a few times, it flew towards a distance and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Su Zimo vaguely guessed that this white paper crane was a talisman of the cultivation world. It was a means of communication. Although he was aware of this, Su Zimo could not stop it. The sword kinesis flight speed of the one-armed Qi refinement warrior was not as quick as Su Zimo. With the delay, Su Zimo almost caught with him. This man was terrified. He rampantly circulated spirit Qi into his flying sword. The flying sword rose and dashed higher up in the sky. You were lucky to have escaped the last time. Today, you will stay here. At the sight of the Qi refinement warrior about to dash into the sky, Su Zimo hollered and threw up the roulette that he had picked up in passing. Boo! Boo! The roulette transformed into a flash of light, broke through the empty sky, giving out intense and terrifying sounds as the winds roared. Although one was in the sky and the other on the ground, they were not too far from each other. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior wanted to avoid it but was too late. In that split second, the one-armed Qi refinement warrior gritted his teeth. Disregarding whether he would fall off, he controlled the flying sword on his feet, wanting to block the roulette that was shooting over. Clang! Sparks flew everywhere as the sword and roulette clashed into each other. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior's expression suddenly changed. The spirit Qi on his flying sword actually dissipated instantly. The flying sword lost control upon the impact of the collision and reversed towards him at an even faster speed. Poof! The entire flying sword pierced into the belly of the one-armed Qi refinement warrior. That was a Qi refinement warrior's lifeline and sea of Qi. The broken sea of Qi meant that over 10 years of his cultivation from painstaking efforts had gone to waste. The one-armed Qi refinement warrior fell from the sky and landed heavily on the floor. Dust flew all over and successive sounds of bones breaking could be heard coming from inside his body. Looking ghastly pale and blood foaming from the mouth, the one-armed Qi refinement warrior saw Su Zimo striding towards him. Endless malice and resentment flashed across his eyes. With a ferocious expression, he laughed crazily and said, "You are finished. I have just notified the clan. Not long after, Foundation establishment cultivators will rush over to slay you. You will come down to keep me company very soon." Ha ha ha. Oh. Su Zimo raised his brows and said, "So there aren't any Foundation establishment cultivators in the capital then?" The one-armed Qi refinement officer was stunned. "Thanks for the information. It looks like I, Su Zimo, am not destined to die yet. Even the capital city of the country of Yen cannot stop me." Su Zimo's expression was cold and aloof. He stepped forward and trampled on the skull of the one-armed Qi refinement warrior, crushing it. He took this man's storage bag and put it away in his arms before dashing outside. If there were Foundation establishment cultivators in the capital, coupled with other Qi refinement officers, city guards, and the Imperial Army, it would be very difficult for Su Zimo to leave the capital. This was because there was a huge gap of one realm between the Foundation establishment cultivator and Qi refinement warrior. This was a great leap in quality, and the strong powers erupted by Foundation establishment cultivators was enough to kill Su Zimo. On the other hand, without the Foundation establishment cultivators, even level 10 perfected Qi refinement warriors would be of little threat to Su Zimo. "I have to make my way out as soon as possible," Su Zimo told himself quietly. If he were to dawdle too long in the capital, he would eventually land himself in a hard battle when the Foundation establishment cultivators from Joyful Clan arrived. It would be hard for him to escape death then. The Imperial Army of the King of Yen formed a massive array, holding spears as they dashed forward fearlessly. At one glance, they were impenetrable. Kill! 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 Hundreds and thousands of the Imperial Army hollered angrily together. The sound was deafening. A massive and powerful aura engulfed the entire place, slamming toward Su Zimo as if wanting to drown him. The Imperial Army was absolutely loyal to the King of Yen. They were resolute and determined. Although Su Zimo was so powerful that he could kill Qi refinement warriors, the Imperial Army was fearless and did not back off. Every member of the Imperial Army had a gaze that was as sharp as a sword. Carrying a chilling expression, they had strong murderous intent. The congregation of hundreds and thousands of the Imperial Army erupted a powerful and unwavered determination that astonished the minds and hearts. This was the power of a country. Enshrouded by this massive aura and the frightening willpower, even Qi refinement warriors who came would have long been scared out of their wits and turned cowardly prior to fighting. However, Su Zimo's expression remained unchanged. Instead, the brilliance in his eyes intensified. Su Zimo took a long and deep breath and circulated the Anaconda Eclipse Heart Sutra. His chest bulged and lifted, seemingly wanting to devour the sun and moon. Pausing for a moment, he suddenly opened his mouth. Ah! Su Zimo gave a long yell. A humongous flow of energy surged out of Su Zimo's mouth. His voice was booming in high pitch, penetrating gold and cracking stones, and shrouding the shouts of the 100,000s of the Imperial Army instantly. Many members of the Imperial Army revealed a pained expression. The weapons in their hands dropped and they covered their ears with both hands. In Songlang mountain range, Su Zimo had personally witnessed a spirit demon roaring loudly and shattering the body of small and weak spirit beasts with that force. Although his yell was not that lethal, it was still astonishing and powerful. How could ordinary people withstand that? Boom! Su Zimo took a step out, causing the ground to tremble, black bricks split open and sandstones flew all over. The King of Yen is already dead. Who dares to stop me? At this moment it was as if Su Zimo had been possessed by a powerful ancient demon. The murderous aura was stifling, seemingly wanting to destroy the entire world. It subdued the aura of the hundreds and thousands of the Imperial Army troops almost instantly. Many of the soldiers in the Imperial Army turned ghastly pale with dazed expressions. They actually fell to the ground with wobbly legs. The Imperial Army was in chaos. The strong and powerful aura gathered earlier was swept away immediately, revealing faint signs of defeat. At this juncture, Su Zimo laughed loudly. He was looking disdainfully at everyone out of the corner of his eyes. The aura was towering. The ordinary man in the eyes of the King of Yen was repressing the power of a country. Chapter 34, The Intense Battle in the Capital. Chapter 34, The Intense Battle in the Capital. The Imperial Army suffered a major setback. Su Zimo had not even made any moves to attack. He only dashed around madly in the swarm of soldiers with plow-heaven stride. In 10 minutes, he had already forced his way out. Bang! 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 The areas that Su Zimo had passed through were in great chaos. There were hundreds of thousands of the Imperial Army trying to hold him back. Yet, he was seemingly in a no-man's territory and no one could halt his steps. Su Zimo circulated body petrification. The muscles in his entire body tightened until they were as hard as rocks and his defensive ability increased greatly. When the Imperial Army pierced Su Zimo with the golden spears in their hands, the spears would either slip off or break on the spot. They could not hurt Su Zimo at all. Not long after, Su Zimo had already dashed out of the palace. At this moment, Su Zimo sensed great danger in his heart. When he was running, he suddenly made dodging moves and lowered his body like an anaconda slithering close to the ground. Swoosh! A cold beam of sword light streaked across the top of Su Zimo's head. It was a Qi refinement warrior. Su Zimo rose. He dashed diagonally towards the direction where the sword came from like a wild bull, hurling off many of the Imperial Army by the side. The Qi refinement warrior who was hiding in the crowd saw his flying sword come to nothing. Just as he tried to redirect the flying sword, before he could even recover his senses, he discovered that all of the Imperial Army in front blocking him from view had already fallen to the ground. The blood-drenched Su Zimo had already closed in on him. It was too late for this person to dodge. Bang! Su Zimo casually punched him and the latter was flung away. The eyes of this Qi refinement warrior had lost focus. His chest collapsed, his bones shattered and pierced into his lungs. Before his body touched the ground, he had already stopped breathing. With the power erupted from Su Zimo's body, even if he did not make any moves, the Qi refinement warrior would not be able to withstand any one casual punch or kick from him as well. At this moment, the capital was in great chaos. More and more Qi refinement warriors gathered as they rushed over from various places across the city. During this time, there were already about 10 of them who had taken hostile action against Su Zimo. Initially, These Qi refinement warriors hid among the Imperial army and guards while directing the flying sword to attack Su Zimo. However, after Su Zimo killed a few of them, the remaining Qi refinement warriors were feeling scared. They realized that Su Zimo could find them even if they hid in the crowd. The Imperial army and city guards could not stop Su Zimo at all. One after another, many Qi refinement warriors rose into the air, surrounding and attacking Su Zimo. Although this would deplete their spirit Qi faster, Su Zimo could not pose a threat to them then. The worst situation had occurred. In such a circumstance whereby dozens of Qi refinement warriors constantly attacked him, Su Zimo could still circulate body petrification to endure the attacks from the lower-level Qi refinement warriors. However, Su Zimo had to dodge the attacks from the level 9 and perfected Qi refinement warriors when they unsheathed their inferior-grade spirit weapons. The hardest part was that Su Zimo had no way to retaliate. In addition, Su Zimo's speed would definitely decrease if he were to rely solely on his spirit perception to dodge the attacks of the Qi refinement warrior. Coupled with the constant harassment by the Imperial army and guards surrounding him, Su Zimo could very possibly lose his life in the capital. Everyone, there is no need to panic. This lad can't leave the place. As long as we unanimously join forces and detain him in the capital, the Foundation establishment cultivators from my joyful clan will arrive very soon. In mid-air, a perfected Qi refinement warrior said loudly. At this very moment, Su Zimo suddenly turned back and smiled at that person. He had a strange look in his eyes. This person's heart froze. He flew on the flying sword and quickly retreated so that he could distance himself from Su Zimo. Barely anyone had noticed that Su Zimo came all the way to the palace from an inconspicuous corner and not the main gate of the capital. That was where the Sky Treasure Pavilion was located. Su Zimo rushed out of the Imperial army's entrapment and headed towards a wall ahead of him. Swoosh! The moment that Su Zimo hit the wall suddenly transformed into a glistening water curtain and Su Zimo's figure disappeared from sight. Many members of the Imperial army were stunned on the spot. Some people did not believe it. They slammed their skulls on it but ended up falling to the ground with broken and bleeding heads. The Qi refinement warrior in the mid-air furrowed his brows tightly. Of course, they were aware that the place was the Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, what shocked them was that Su Zimo could enter and leave the Sky Treasure Pavilion as he wished, although he was not a Qi refinement warrior. This proved that he had the Sky Treasure badge. Senior Brotherly, what should we do? One of the Qi refinement warriors asked in a low voice. The Sky Treasure Pavilion was the largest trading house in the Great Zhou dynasty and had a superior status. Killing and fighting was banned in the premise. There was once a situation where Foundation establishment cultivators stirred up trouble in the Sky Treasure Pavilion and ended up being killed on the spot. There had been rumors in the Great Zhou dynasty that the Sky Treasure Pavilion's backing was the monarch of the Great Zhou dynasty. No matter how gutsy these Qi refinement warriors were, they dared not enter the place to catch people. No need to worry. This person cannot always hide inside. He will have to come out sooner or later. When the clan elders rush here and communicate with Sky Treasure Pavilion, I don't believe that Sky Treasure Pavilion will jeopardize their relationship with Joyful Clan for the sake of one mortal. On the second floor of the Sky Treasure Pavilion. The manager of the Sky Treasure Pavilion had been startled awake. Blinking his sleepy eyes, he asked the waiting staff beside him, what happened outside? Why is it so chaotic? I heard that the King of Yen has been killed and the murderer is on the run. He's not caught yet? No. Listening to what the people outside said, he did not seem to be a Qi refinement warrior. However, he knows corporal mortification martial arts. He is invulnerable and has very strong close combat ability. Many Qi refinement warriors have already died in his hands. Could it be him? The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion muttered and frowned as a figure flashed across his mind. At this very moment, he could hear footsteps coming from the main hall. The speed of the visitor was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the footsteps had already ascended to the second floor. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion focused his sight. He only saw a young man drenched in blood heading over directly with a bloody head hanging on his waist. That face on the bloody head no doubt belonged to the King of Yen. I came to collect the Cold Moon Saber and Sanguine Crystal Bow, the visitor said in a deep voice. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion trembled all over and sobered up instantly. Swallowing his saliva, he nodded and said, "Okay, I will get them." After a few moments, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion brought the Cold Moon Saber and Sky Treasure Pavilion to Su Zimo. These two pseudo-spirit weapons were too heavy. The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion had to use spirit chi to control them and could barely bring them over. "Thank you so much." The visitor hung the Cold Moon Saber on his waist. Fastening the quiver on his back and holding the Sanguine Crystal Bow with his hands, he turned and left. It was only until the visitor disappeared did the waiting staff at the side heave a long sigh of relief and gradually calm down. This man is very scary. I even have feelings of fear and trepidation when I stand before him, the waiting staff said. After pausing shortly, he then had a moment of realization before exclaiming in shock, "Don't tell me that he is the one who killed the King of Yen? Who is he? Why did he kill the King of Yen?" The manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion had a grave expression. After considering for a long time, he searched out a white paper crane from a storage bag. Releasing some spirit chi from his fingertip, he wrote a line of words, "The King of Yen is already dead. The group is now leaderless and the capital is in chaos. The murderer is not a chi refinement warrior and he has the third princess's Sky Treasure gold badge. His identity is suspicious." After writing out the message, the manager of Sky Treasure Pavilion walked to the window and sent off the paper crane in his hands gently. The paper crane fluttered its wings and soared into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Chapter 35, Kill One Man in 10 Steps. Chapter 35, Kill One Man in 10 Steps. Dozens of chi refinement warriors gathered in the air, discussing countermeasures and staring at the entrance of Sky Treasure Pavilion at the same time. Soon after, Su Zimo stepped out of the Sky Treasure Pavilion with a long saber hung on his waist and a blood-colored huge bow in his hands. "Su Zimo, you won't be able to get away. If you surrender, your Su family may still be pardoned. Otherwise, humph, your Su family will definitely be annihilated," one of the perfected chi refinement warriors said worriedly. Within such a short time frame, someone had already told the chi refinement warrior from Joyful Clan about Su Zimo's background. "You wish to annihilate the Su family?" Su Zimo sneered. The murderous intent in his eyes intensified as he suddenly drew out 3 arrows from his quiver and coldly said, "I will exterminate you first." He bent the bow and knocked the arrow. The Sanguine Crystal Bow weighed thousands of pounds. Coupled with the huge tendons of the spirit beast anaconda, the power that it could erupt would weigh at least 10,000s of pounds. There were 2 key points in archery. First, the force. Second, the accuracy. The Sanguine Crystal Bow in Su Zimo's hands was heavy enough. Although its precision was lacking a little, it did not matter in a situation whereby the dozens of chi refinement warriors were gathered at the same place. Su Zimo did not even have to aim. He just had to shoot towards that crowd of people. Swoosh! Bow like a full moon and arrows like shooting stars. Almost simultaneously, 3 sharp arrows were shot. There was only the sound of them breaking through the air. Poof! 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 Sounds of sharp weapons piercing blood and flesh could be heard. Before they could react, 3 chi refinement warriors were shot by Su Zimo and dropped to the ground. It was too fast. Many chi refinement warriors in the air were caught by surprise. They did not expect that Su Zimo would have a means to deal with them. The expressions of the remaining Qi refinement warriors suddenly changed. They hurriedly redirected their flying swords and fled behind Su Zimo to distance themselves from the latter. Terror filled their eyes and fear lingered in their hearts. Given the power and speed of the 3 arrows, even perfected Qi refinement warriors would not be able to dodge them. At the sight of this, Su Zimo did not hide the contempt in his eyes. He laughed out loud, "With such capabilities, you still wish to stop me?" Su Zimo strapped the Sanguine crystal bow on his back and unsheathed the cold moon saber with a backhand grip. Thereafter, he dashed towards the outside of the capital. With the cold moon saber by his side, Su Zimo was like a tiger with wings. Although the Imperial Army and guards won in numbers, no one could stop Su Zimo's killing momentum. It was in complete disarray after Su Zimo fought his way through them, leaving behind rows of corpses and blood flowing like rivers. The dozens of Qi refinement warriors in mid-air had not given up. They followed Su Zimo from afar, but the spirit weapons under their control no longer posed any threat to Su Zimo. When a flying sword shot over, Su Zimo no longer dodged them. With a wave of his saber, the flying sword would be hurled off. The level 9 and perfected Qi refinement warriors could barely control the inferior grade spirit weapons hit by the cold moon saber. However, the other Qi refinement warriors did not have such control. Although the cold moon saber was a pseudo-spirit weapon, it was integrated with too many rare spirit items. Its toughness did not lose out to middle-grade spirit weapons. Complemented with Su Zimo's strong and powerful body strength, just one slash from it could dissipate all the spirit Qi on the flying sword directly. There would be a massive number of casualties if the spirit weapon that lost control were to hit the crowd of the Imperial Army and city guards. Over time, feelings of fear and terror started to spread between the Imperial Army and the city guards. When one person started to retreat, many people would follow suit subconsciously. The initial unwavering determination of the Imperial Army and guards had finally been crushed. Fear was contagious. The dozens of Qi refinement warriors lingered in the air. Their expressions ugly and they were filled with hesitation. In actual fact, the moment that Su Zimo picked up the Sanguine crystal bow, he was already in complete control of the situation. Many Qi refinement warriors wanted to dodge the sharp arrows from Su Zimo and had to distance themselves from him as much as possible. When the distance was greater, the power of the sharp arrows would inevitably reduce. The deviation from the target would also increase tremendously to allow more reaction time for the many Qi refinement warriors. But at the same time, with the increase in distance, it also meant that they needed to use more spirit Qi to control their flying swords and would not be able to hang on for too long. If they were to go closer to Su Zimo and the latter suddenly turned back and shot an arrow, one of the Qi refinement warriors would drop from the air. One had to know that the 20 sharp arrows in Su Zimo's quiver were also forged by the remaining materials used for the Sanguine crystal bow. It was not any different from pseudo-spirit weapons. Once they were shot, be it at the vital body point or not, it would cause devastating damage to the body of the Qi refinement warrior if the powers contained in the sharp arrow suddenly erupted. If they were shot in the arm would become paralyzed. If they were shot in the thigh would become fractured. If they were shot in the body would explode after the sharp arrow pierced through it. At the sight of Su Zimo on the brink of fighting his way out of the capital, many Qi refinement warriors felt extremely helpless. They were torn between advancing or retreating. At the gate of the city, many guards stationed at the site had long closed the gate. 10 monstrous-sized ballistae for defending the city walls were placed in a row at the gate. The ballistae arrows were thicker and longer than the spears in the hands of the guards. The arrow heads were shining with sinister and cold lights, aiming at Su Zimo and ready to be launched at any point in time. Su Zimo's killing momentum was on the rise. Seeing that the city gate was right in front of him, he did not care about the ballistae. He held the cold moon saber and charged forward. Release. The leader of the guard standing beside the ballistae lowered his arms and yelled. Swash! 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 10 huge arrows shot out, tearing the air instantly and making terrifying sounds. How powerful was the ballistae arrows? The arrows shot out could even destroy the city walls. However, now, all 10 ballistae arrows were only targeting a single living person made of flesh and blood. The ballistae arrows had not been used to attack a city but to kill a human instead. This kind of situation was unprecedented in history. It was also a rare sight in the future. The ballistae arrows traveled at lightning speed and Su Zimo was still charging. In a split second, the ballistae arrows had already appeared in front of Su Zimo. The 10 ballistae arrows came together like a huge stone pillar smashing over. The aura was appalling. Ha! Su Zimo's eyes shone as he exhaled and yelled while gripping the cold moon saber. Faint sounds of vibration emanated from the bones in his body. His large tendons pulsated and sounds of bowstring vibrations rang. The muscles in his body knotted together, seemingly doubling his body size. Break it! Su Zimo raised his saber and slashed the 10 ballistae arrows with all his might. Bang! Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, sparks flew as the 10 ballistae arrows actually broke in half and scattered all over the ground by the cold moon saber in Su Zimo's hands. Pust! When everyone in the capital witnessed this scene, their pupils instantly contracted into needle heads as they gasped. Even this could not hurt him? How could this be the power of a human? Although Su Zimo had blocked the 10 ballistae arrows, he had also taken a half-step back due to the impact of this force. He flung his slightly sore arms and grinned at the numerous guards at the city gate. All of you are finished. The guards at the city gate were so frightened that all colors drained from their faces. The power of the ballistae were great, but loading the bow needed 10 people to pull the string and 3 people to carry the arrow over to reload it. During this time, Su Zimo had already dashed before them, not giving them any chance at all. Poof! 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 Flashes of blood appeared consecutively. No one could stop the powers of Su Zimo's slash. What postnatal experts, perfected Khanate expert. After Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, these pugilistic experts were as useless as chickens and dogs. This was the power of cultivation. Once he stepped into the cultivation world, Su Zimo did not even need to bother about using conspiracy or endure for 16 years to plot an assassination. Let me tell you openly that I want to kill you, and you cannot escape either. Even the tightly guarded capital with chi refinement warriors could not stop me. In the blink of an eye, one after another, the guards at the city gate were fleeing desperately. Seeing that he had hopes of leaving the city, Su Zimo was instantly invigorated. He could not help lamenting, with every 10 steps a man is killed, leaving no trails in 1,000 miles, left in anguish after the matter, hiding one's light under a bushel. Ha ha ha, the capital of the country of Yen is only as such. Su Zimo's laughter filled the sky, displaying extreme arrogance. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.